Chapter 557. In the evening, the Sky Crane Gang's mountain had become a dead mountain. The setting sun was like blood, but it wasn't blood. Instead, it was a river of blood flowing slowly. The entire Sky Crane Gang sect was filled with the thick smell of blood. Ling Shiqi wiped off the blood on his saber and looked at the people who were plundering the Sky Crane Gang's resources. He sighed in his heart. A first-rate sect. Not long ago, this was an unshakable giant to Ling Shiqi. But today, he had actually destroyed a first-rate sect. In fact, it wasn't just him. Zhan Rui, Chao Peng, and Lei Haoge were all like this. First-rate sects were second only to the top sects in the world. They were definitely overlords. For example, the Sky Crane Gang was stronger than the Discipline Commission or the Dark Lightning Guards. If it was a normal situation, even if both sides worked together, they would still lose a mouthful of teeth. But who told their gang leader and grand elder to die early in the 100 Sects martial meeting? Without these two peak forces, the Sky Crane Gang's strength would be reduced by more than half. In addition to the slaughtering King's Manor and Ling Shiqi's forces, destroying the half-crippled Sky Crane Gang was naturally not a problem. However, the destruction of a first-rate sect had not happened in Shantai County for over 100 years. When this news spread out, let alone Shantai County, even the entire Thunderblaze dynasty would be shaken. This was naturally a good thing for the Thunderblaze dynasty. Because there were many people hiding in the dark who were preparing to do something when His Majesty's lifespan was nearing its end. Today's battle could be considered a powerful deterrent. Those earth rats would not dare to show their faces for a short period of time. Lei Haoge also felt a little elated. He had been an idle prince for several years, but now, he had annihilated the Thunder Alliance and then the Sky Crane Gang. Even though he wasn't the mastermind during this process, he was still a prince, So, whether it was the Dark Lightning Guards or the Discipline Commission, they would put him at the top of the list. He could imagine how shocked his imperial brothers would be when this news reached the imperial capital. Lei Haoge grinned and said to Ling Shiqi, "This king really admires Lord Lu and regrets that we didn't meet earlier. Tonight, we will drink until we are drunk." The others were well aware that Lei Haoge was trying his best to rope in Ling Shiqi. Ling Shiqi naturally noticed this as well, but he didn't want to get too involved with these princes. He cupped his fists and said, "Your Highness, I still have to rush back to the imperial capital to report on my mission. Let's drink this wine another time." Lei Haoge's eyes twitched. Back at the slaughtering King's Manor, Ling Shiqi's attitude had been completely different. Ling Shiqi had even referred to himself as a subject. Next time. As long as Ling Shiqi did not come to Shantai County, they would probably never have the chance to meet again. But Lei Haoge had made some progress. Not only did he not show any anger, he smiled even more brightly. He found a way out of this embarrassing situation and invited the others. Of course, they happily agreed. Ling Shiqi was about to leave with Feng Shamo and the others when a voice appeared in his mind. "Brother Lu, please wait." It was Zhuge Puha who transmitted the message. He said in a strange tone, "This one has some things to say to Brother Lu alone. Please step aside for a moment." Ling Shiqi's footsteps did not stop. He only nodded his head slightly. That night, Ling Shiqi and the others came to a small city to rest. He himself took advantage of the night to sneak out of the city. In a forest outside the city, someone had been waiting for him. When Zhuge Puha saw Ling Shiqi appear, he waved his hand and scattered starlight in all directions. The starlight immediately dimmed, and the two figures could no longer be seen from the outside. No sound or presence could be heard from inside. What's with all the commotion? If you have something to say, just say it. Ling Shiqi said straightforwardly. Zhuge Puha said with a serious expression, "Brother Lu, can you take off your clothes?" Ling Shiqi immediately showed an expression of disbelief. Could it be that Zhuge Puha had some special fetish? In the middle of the night, in a dark forest, he even set up a formation. Ling Shiqi felt a chill run down his spine, but he immediately threw away these messy thoughts. There was indeed something fishy about his body. It was the star atlas that suddenly appeared on his body after he opened his 360 spiritual cavities. Now he also remembered that when he used demonic ephemeral bloom to deal with Gao Han's divine light, he had indeed mysteriously absorbed Zhuge Puha's star atlas. At that time, Ling Shiqi was completely focused, so he didn't pay much attention to it. Later, he also thought that Zhuge Puha had helped him, but now it seemed that something unexpected had happened. Looking at Ling Shiqi's disdainful expression, Zhuge Puha also realized his slip of the tongue. His expression stiffened, and he said awkwardly, "Brother Lu, please don't misunderstand. I just want to confirm something. Brother Zhuge, you'd better make it clear. Otherwise, I wouldn't have done such a strange thing." Ling Shiqi shook his head. Others didn't know, but he certainly knew that this star atlas was probably related to the legendary Stellar Clan. That was the Stellar Clan that had enslaved the human clan for countless years. Even after hundreds of thousands of years, the resentment buried in their souls hadn't weakened much. Once others knew that he was related to the Stellar Clan, he would definitely become the public enemy. Not to mention a meteoric rise, it would be good enough if he could keep his life. Therefore, it was impossible for him to show his star atlas to outsiders. Zhuge Puha looked troubled and said, "Brother Lu, actually, when you were fighting against Gao Han's divine light, I saw the star atlas, and I'm sure that it wasn't a spiritual technique. So, Brother Lu, don't deceive yourself. Also, I have absolutely no enmity towards Brother Lu. Please rest assured." However, the more he said this, the more suspicious Ling Shiqi became. After all, he had cheated Zhuge Puha of many precious cultivation resources. No matter how generous Zhuge Puha was, it was impossible for him to not hold any grudges. He said, "I have urgent matters to attend to. I'll take my leave first." Seeing that Ling Shiqi still didn't believe him, Zhuge Puha sighed deeply. He formed a seal with his hands, and stars appeared around his body. Strangely, Ling Shiqi's body also began to glow with faint starlight, reflecting Zhuge Puha's radiance from afar. "Brother Lu, to be honest, my Zhuge family has a great relationship with you. This is the strongest evidence. Now, Brother Lu, are you willing to listen to me in detail?" Ling Shiqi, who was about to turn around, paused. Now it seemed that there was indeed some relationship between him and Zhuge Puha, so he nodded silently. Zhuge Puha took a deep breath, and there was a hint of solemnity on his face. He said word by word, "The Zhuge family is the guardian family of the Stellar Clan." Chapter 558. Hearing the words, "guardian family," Ling Shiqi looked at Zhuge Puha suspiciously. The human tribe and the star tribe had been enemies for generations. No one would believe that Zhuge Puha or the Zhuge family was the so-called guardian family. Zhuge Puha knew that Ling Shiqi would not believe him. He used his spiritual power and tore off his shirt, revealing his muscular and beautiful upper body. Ling Shiqi's eyes narrowed. There was a star map on Zhuge Puha's body. However, he only had one star map. Compared to Ling Shiqi's countless star maps, it was too simple. "Brother Lu, you have seen it. Strictly speaking, I am also a member of the star tribe. Unfortunately, my star tribe bloodline is so thin that it is almost non-existent. My family used a secret method to stimulate my bloodline, so I can only be considered half a member of the star tribe. Brother Lu, you have the pure bloodline of the star tribe. You are the person that the Zhuge family has been waiting for generations." The more Zhuge Puha spoke, the more excited he became. Ling Shiqi had never thought that there were descendants of the star tribe in this world. They had not been discovered for so long. At this point, Ling Shiqi was almost convinced. However, he still asked, "As far as I know, the star tribe has been destroyed for hundreds of thousands of years. How did you survive until now? Also, how did you know that I have the bloodline of the star tribe?" Zhuge Puha could see that Ling Shiqi was beginning to believe him. He was delighted and said, "It is a long story. In fact, countless years ago, the human tribe on this continent was at the bottom of the food chain. At that time, the demon tribe was the overlord of this continent. The human tribe was not even considered as slaves. At most, they were considered as rations. Later, the star tribes suddenly appeared and slaughtered the demon tribe. They saved the human tribe from disaster. Unfortunately, the star tribe did not have a large population and could not exterminate the demon tribe. They could only drive them to the wilderness in the far north. The human race was rescued by the Star Clan. They took the initiative to worship the Star Clan as the God Clan. They worshipped the Star Clan for generations and named this continent the Star Glory Continent. Hearing this, Leng Shiqi recalled the images that suddenly appeared in his mind in the dragon vein. It was indeed a group of silver-robed people slaughtering all kinds of powerful monsters. If all of this was true, then the history that everyone knew now was not true. According to the current records, the Star Clan was extremely arrogant. They regarded themselves as gods and humans as ants. However, this was the opposite of what Zhuge Puha had said. Sure enough, the winner is king and the loser is a bandit. Zhuge Puha's expression was also somewhat displeased. He continued, later on, without the demon race as their natural enemy, the human race began to multiply. Brother Lu should also be able to imagine the greed of human nature. As the human race increased in numbers, the resources they enjoyed naturally decreased. Thus, one war after another broke out. In order to stabilize the Star Glory continent, the Star Clan had to take action to suppress the wars in various places. However, they did not expect that the human race would hold a grudge against them. The human race was cunning. They begged the Star Clan to help them perfect their cultivation system. At the same time, they secretly accumulated strength and prepared to overthrow the Star Clan's rule. Strangely enough, over the past hundreds of thousands of years, the Star Clan gave birth to fewer and fewer children. Their bloodline became thinner and their strength gradually weakened. Until hundreds of thousands of years ago, the four saints suddenly rose and led the human race to overthrow the Star Clan and control this continent. From then on, the continent was renamed the Falling Star Continent. He briefly told the secret that had lasted for hundreds of thousands of years. Leng Shiqi thought about it carefully. It really did seem like something that the human race would do. However, he also had a few questions. Even if what you said is the truth, so what? Do you still want to make a comeback and take control of this continent? Moreover, you still haven't explained how the Zhuge family survived. If Brother Zhuge can't explain it, you and I will be the only one who can leave this place tonight, Leng Shiqi said indifferently. Since he had indirectly admitted that he had the bloodline of the Star Clan, Zhuge Puha, who knew about it, was naturally on his blacklist. Zhuge Puha did not mind Leng Shiqi's words. He said, the Zhuge family's appearance was also a coincidence. Just now, I mentioned that the Star Clan had once helped the human race perfect their cultivation system. Moreover, it was increasingly difficult for the Star Clan to reproduce. As the saying goes, everything can be unexpected. When the Star Clan was communicating with the human race about their cultivation system, a couple fell in love. The most unexpected thing was that they actually gave birth to a child. It should be known that the Star Clan was a race that found it extremely difficult to reproduce. Perhaps this was the price they had to pay for being born with great strength. It was already difficult for them to reproduce even if they were from the same race, let alone with the weak human race. This matter immediately shocked all the Star Clan members. Faced with the dwindling population and thinning bloodline, they were shocked to find that the baby's bloodline was not weaker than the Star Clan's. Other than the appearance and the lack of divine power, the baby was no different from the Star Clan members. Hence, he was named Zhuge Xingqian. The Star Clan members were overjoyed. They did not care about the so-called differences between humans and gods and started to reproduce with the human race. However, since then, no new children were born. Only Zhuge Xingqian had the ability to continue the bloodline. However, this could not solve the problem at its root. The Star Clan thought of many solutions. However, at that time, the four saints were born. The Star Clan did not have time to study the bloodline. As the war continued, the Star Clan also realized their ending. Hence, they started to set up many backup plans. As the Zhuge Xingqian's bloodline looked exactly the same as the human race, they hid them among the human race and became the guardian clan of the Star Clan. They hoped that one day in the future, they would be able to restore the glory of the Star Clan. Zhuge Xingqian is the ancestor of the Zhuge family. Leng Shiqi finally understood the origin of the Zhuge family. In his impression, the Zhuge family was a hidden family that was between a first-rate force and a top force. They did not have much of a presence in the outside world. Who would have thought that the Zhuge family was the backup plan left behind by the Star Clan? However, he was even more confused because he clearly had the appearance of a human. According to Zhuge Puha, he should be a member of the Zhuge family. If he did not have his previous memories and did not know the truth about the Zhuge family due to his soul transmigration, it would be fine. However, Zhuge Puha did not recognize Leng Shiqi when the elites met him. This meant that Leng Shiqi was not a member of the Zhuge family. Then, where did he get the bloodline of the Star Clan? To be honest, I don't know why Brother Lu has the bloodline of the Star Clan. However, judging from the complexity of the star map on your body, the purity of your bloodline is definitely not inferior to that of a real member of the Star Clan. The Zhuge family has been waiting for someone like Brother Lu for hundreds of thousands of years. If Brother Lu is willing to return to the family with me, we can completely activate the bloodline in your body. By then, Brother Lu's talent, power, and foundation will reach an unprecedented height. What do you think, Brother Lu? Zhuge Puha stared at Leng Shiqi with a burning gaze. Leng Shiqi did not have any expression on his face. However, thousands of thoughts kept flashing through his mind. He was still trying to determine the authenticity of what Zhuge Puha had said. Judging from Zhuge Puha's behavior, what he had said was most likely true. However, Leng Shiqi was not sure if the Zhuge family's heart had changed. After all, hundreds of thousands of years had passed. No matter how loyal Zhuge Xingqian was back then, after so many generations, would the current Zhuge family still sincerely protect the Star Clan? Moreover, if he went to the Zhuge family and was subdued by a group of experts, what would he do? Chapter 559. It was not that Leng Shiqi was a narrow-minded person, but he had always been cautious. If he went to the Zhuge family and was controlled by a group of masters, who could he seek justice from? Brother Lu, are you worried about your own safety? Zhuge Puha seemed to have seen through Leng Shiqi's worries. He smiled and said, if Brother Lu is really worried, you can inform Steward Gao that I would like to invite Brother Lu to be my guest. If anything happens to Brother Lu, Steward Gao will know. If it doesn't work, I can ask Brother Lu to plant a restriction in my body so that you can take my life at any time. At this point, Leng Shiqi finally nodded and said, I can go to the Zhuge family, but I have 3 conditions. Please say, Brother Lu, Zhuge Puha said hurriedly when he saw that Leng Shiqi had agreed. Leng Shiqi thought for a while and said, first of all, as you said, I have to plant a restriction in you and report my whereabouts to Steward Gao. This is to ensure my safety. Secondly, when we reach the Zhuge family, you have to shut down all the formations so that I can leave at any time. Lastly, no matter what the result is, I don't want anyone else in this world to know that I have the blood of the stellar tribe. If you can agree to these 3 conditions, I can go with you. Zhuge Puha did not hesitate and said solemnly, no problem. In that case, I will make some arrangements tomorrow. The day after tomorrow, I will go with you to the Zhuge family. Okay, I will wait here for Brother Lu. Goodbye. Leng Shiqi said and left immediately. He agreed to go to the Zhuge family because of the blood of the stellar tribe. If he could fully awaken the power of the blood, his strength would definitely soar. No one would go against power. Moreover, he had some confidence. He could see some traces of formations with his supercilious eyes. If the Zhuge family secretly activated any formations, he would turn and leave. If all the formations were shut down, he could teleport away at any time with his fate skill. Furthermore, with Eunuch Gao and the Dark Thunder Guards backing him, he believed that the Zhuge family would not dare to play any tricks. After he left, Zhuge Puha took out a mirror, and on the other side of the mirror was an old man. The old man wasn't angry, but he was still imposing. He said, Pu-he, I asked you to gather information about the Star Clansmen. Is there any news? Exactly. I've found that person. Hearing this, the elder's eyes widened. Even though he didn't know where he was, the horrifying chi passed through the mirror and made Juga Puha's face turn pale. Half a month ago, I sensed that someone had awakened the star bloodline, and you've already found it? The old man seemed to be in disbelief that Juga Puha could find the star clansman so quickly. The Juga family had not been able to find it for generations. Now that they had found it, he was in disbelief. I wouldn't dare to lie to you. That person's name is Lu Xingji. He's the envoy inspector of the Dark Thunder Guard's headquarters. He was on a mission with me this time. I found him by chance. Juga Puha explained. What a coincidence. Have you confirmed it? I've just confirmed it. It's him without a doubt. He has also agreed to return to the clan with me. The elder was stunned for a while. Then, he laughed crazily. Ha ha ha. Good, good, good. Pu-hee, you've done a great job. Bring him back quickly. There's hope for the revival of the Star Clan. Oh yes, are you familiar with this person? What kind of person is he? The appearance of Leng Shiqi was great news for the Zhuge family. It was also a chance for the Star Clan to reappear. However, if he was a mediocre person, it would be difficult to handle. Don't worry, Elder. This person is the best in terms of talent, strength, and shrewdness. He's also the champion of this year's elite gathering. I'm inferior to him. Speaking of this, his expression became a little strange. As for his character, it's hard to say. He's bold and reckless, but in fact, he's cautious. He looks crazy, but he can often turn danger into safety. He's greedy and lustful, but sometimes he's unusually generous and ruthless. He's sometimes cold and sometimes passionate. He's a very complicated person. I can't see through him. The elder was silent for a while. It's okay. As long as he's strong and shrewd enough, it'll be fine. When will you be back? The day after tomorrow. Okay, I'll go and make some preparations for the bloodline awakening. With that, the mirror returned to normal, reflecting Zhuge Pu-hee's handsome but slightly tired face. Early the next morning, Leng Shiqi told He Feichen and the others to return to the imperial city first. He was going to the Zhuge family with Zhuge Pu-hee. The others did not have any doubts. Only Feng Shamo secretly glanced at him a few times. No one knew what he was thinking. Then, while he still had time, he activated Fate. He could teleport to the branch of the Blood Garment Pavilion in Shantai County. This time, he came specially to gather information about the Zhuge family. After all, what Zhuge Pu-hee said last night was only one side of the story. He was still a little worried and had to gather information from many sides. After obtaining information about the Zhuge family, Leng Shiqi found that this family was indeed very secretive and had a long history. The Blood Garment Pavilion's information could only be traced back to a few thousand years ago. It seemed that Zhuge Pu-hee's words were true. Other than that, he also found something strange. Every few decades, a young disciple of the Zhuge family would come out to the world to gain experience. Basically, this person would be one of the top super geniuses in Shantai County, and it had been so since ancient times. Even before the Thunderfire dynasty had ceased to exist, there were such rumors. However, the strange thing was that geniuses of this level would definitely become experts that could shake a region. But for some reason, the people of the Zhuge family had never fought for power. When they had enough strength, they would wander around and eventually disappear. When people had almost forgotten about this person, the next generation of geniuses of the Zhuge family would be born. It had been like this for many years. After reading this information, Leng Shiqi could basically believe Zhuge Pu-hee's words. If he guessed correctly, the Zhuge family of the past had all gone to find traces of the Star Tribe. Leng Shiqi felt more at ease. After waiting for a day, he teleported back again and waited until night to meet with Zhuge Pu-hee. Seeing that Leng Shiqi had come as promised, Zhuge Pu-hee immediately smiled and said, "Brother Lu, you are indeed a man of your words. Let's go now. By the way, Brother Lu can set up restrictions at will. I will not resist. Then I won't hold back. Leng Shiqi formed a seal with one hand, and a red gold flame seal entered Zhuge Puhi's body. Zhuge Puhi's face was immediately filled with pain. This seal was one of the many fire-type spells that Elder Huang had given him. Leng Shiqi even hid a trace of the red gold earth dragon flame in it. As long as he willed it, Zhuge Puhi would die on the spot. However, Zhuge Puha still maintained his elegant smile. He took out a palm-sized astrolabe and pressed it on the ground. Immediately, a small star map spread out. Brother Lu, please come in. I'm going to teleport back to my family. You can teleport directly from here. Where is your family? Leng Shiqi asked as he walked into the star map. Zhuge Puhi smiled proudly and said, to be honest, Brother Lu, the Zhuge family is actually not in this space. That's why no one has been able to find it for thousands of years. Chapter 560. Leng Shiqi was shocked. Not in this space. Could it be that the Zhuge family's land is a separate space like the illusory spirit's secret realm? Zhuge Puha kept forming seals with his hands, and the stars kept shining. Finally, they disappeared. When he looked again, there was no one there. Leng Shiqi was used to things like teleportation, even if it was teleportation across space. Hence, Leng Shiqi was very calm. However, when he saw the scene in front of him, he was shocked. He was standing in the middle of a starry sky. Looking around, it was a starry sky and nebula. The stars were twinkling, and there were meteors flashing by from time to time. It was a beautiful scene. In the starry sky, there was nothing except for a few dilapidated palaces. Leng Shiqi looked down and there were endless stars under his feet. It was as if he was floating in the universe. This is the Zhuge family's land? Leng Shiqi murmured. Zhuge Puha had expected Leng Shiqi to be shocked. He answered, that's right. For a long time, only people from the Zhuge family could enter. If Brother Lu did not have the star bloodline, he would not have been able to enter. This further confirms Brother Lu's identity. Ha ha ha, Brother Lu, you are finally here. I, Zhuge Yun, have been waiting for a long time. At this moment, an elder walked out from the hall. His face was flushed, as if he had seen a close relative. Zhuge Puha explained, this is the elder of the Zhuge family, Zhuge Yun. Greetings, Elder Zhuge. Leng Shiqi also greeted him politely. Zhuge Yun stared at Leng Shiqi. The more he looked, the brighter his eyes became. When Leng Shiqi felt a chill in his heart, Zhuge Yun said happily, Brother Lu, you are indeed a one-in-a-million genius. It is not a coincidence that you could awaken the star bloodline. Elder, you flatter me. If you have anything to say, please say it. Huh, Brother Lu, you are so straightforward. Then I will say it. Zhuge Yun lifted his head to look at the starry sky and said in a deep voice, regarding the Star Tribe and the Zhuge family, I believe you already know. My young friend Lu is not a member of the Zhuge clan, nor is he a pure member of the Star clan. Perhaps you are also a descendant of the Star clan and the human race. We can be considered to be of the same origin. Now that you have awakened such a high-purity Star bloodline, you are qualified to activate the many trump cards left behind by the Star clan. At that time, you will have the most abundant resources in the entire continent, and a large number of experts will follow you. As long as you raise your arm and call for help, there will be a day when you will become the ruler of this continent. Zhuge Yun became more and more excited as he spoke, and in the end, he almost went crazy. However, Leng Shiqi's expression was still very calm. Seeing his expression, Zhuge Yun's emotions paused. Little friend Lu, do you have any questions? There are indeed, and quite a few of them, Leng Shiqi replied. Oh. If little friend Lu has any doubts, feel free to ask. Leng Shiqi crossed his arms and said, putting aside the issue of my bloodline, where are the countless resources and experts that you mentioned? I don't believe in such empty promises. Zhuge Yun smiled mysteriously. He did not explain. Instead, he waved his hand, and a star in the sky floated down. It was a star that was as tall as a person. It rotated and floated between Zhuge Yun and Ling Shiqi. Zhuge Yun formed a seal, and the light of the star gradually faded, revealing the scene inside. After seeing what was inside, Ling Shiqi was secretly shocked. There was a person inside this star. This person looked to be in his 60s or 70s. His eyes were tightly shut, and there was no sign of life. He did not understand what this meant. Was he just going to let him see a dead person? At this moment, Zhuge Puha suddenly asked, "Brother Lu, do you know how many members of the Zhuge clan are there?" Only then did Ling Shiqi realize that ever since he entered the Zhuge clan's territory, he had not seen anyone else. He did not try to hide it, and directly opened his supercilious eyes. All the auras within a 20-mile radius were under his control. However, to his surprise, there was not a single aura within the 20-mile radius. This was strange. There was no end to this starry sky. Could it be that the other members of the Zhuge clan were not here? Zhuge Yun smiled and said, "Little friend Lu, you don't have to look. From a certain perspective, the Zhuge clan only has me and Puha." What? Even though Ling Shiqi was experienced and knowledgeable, he could not help but be surprised. As a hidden clan, the Zhuge clan was quite famous in the outside world. How could there only be 2 people? However, Ling Shiqi also keenly grasped the key point in Zhuge Yun's words. Many thoughts flashed through his mind. He looked at the dead person in front of him and said suspiciously, "The Zhuge clan has been passed down for hundreds of thousands of years. It can't be just the 2 of you. Then, are the others like this person?" He pointed at the person who was wrapped in starlight. Zhuge Yun's eyes flashed with admiration and said, "Little friend Lu, you are quick-witted. Look again." As soon as he finished speaking, he made another seal. Something strange happened. The dead person in front of him actually emitted a trace of life. What was even more terrifying was that the trace of spiritual aura that leaked out from this person was actually at the level of oneness of heaven and man. Zhuge Yun's voice sounded. In order to ensure the inheritance of the bloodline, the Zhuge clan has always been passed down through a single bloodline. When a disciple reaches the level of oneness of heaven and man, he will travel all over the continent to look for the descendants of the Star clan and the arrangements left behind. When this person's chi and blood reach the peak and begin to decline, he will return to the clan and enter an eternal deep sleep to maintain his peak combat power. After that, the new generation of disciples will go out. Therefore, the Zhuge clan has at most 5 or 6 people. In this generation, there are only 2 people, Puha and I, left. Little friend Lu, why don't you guess how many powerful people have been sleeping in the Zhuge clan for hundreds of thousands of years? At this point, Zhuge Yun pointed at the starry sky above his head. Ling Shiqi subconsciously raised his head to look, only to see a sky full of twinkling stars. There were simply too many of them. His pupils suddenly contracted and he felt his scalp explode. If these stars were all at the level of oneness of heaven and man or even Tianyuan, once they were released, it was indeed possible to overturn the entire falling star continent. Little friend Lu, do you believe me now? I can also tell you that there are thousands of oneness of heaven and man and hundreds of Tianyuan experts here. This is only a small part of the Star clan's strength. There are still many secrets that have not been uncovered. The terrifying strength has been accumulated for hundreds of thousands of years and is far beyond your imagination. As long as you agree, all of this will belong to you. What you need to do is to completely activate the bloodline and lead the Zhuge clan to restore the glory of the Star clan. I will only ask you one question. Are you willing? In Zhuge Yun's mind, Ling Shiqi's next sentence would definitely be, "I am willing." However, he never dreamed that Ling Shiqi would open his mouth and say, "It's none of my business." Chapter 561. You, what did you say? Zhuge Yun couldn't believe his ears. Even the heavenly origin stage expert was stuttering. Do you need me to repeat myself? Ling Shiqi said bluntly, no matter how much power you have accumulated, you want to become enemies with the entire continent? Humph, if you're tired of living, don't drag me down with you. To be honest, the power that the Zhuge family had accumulated over hundreds of thousands of years was terrifying. Even Leng Shiqi was shocked to the point of being absent-minded. But even if the Zhuge family had thousands of Unity of Heaven realm and hundreds of Sky Origin stage experts, if they wanted to become enemies with all the spirit cultivators in the continent, it was still a little too much. Let's not talk about anything else, just the Thunderfire dynasty. The 36 states, the imperial capital, the imperial family hall of worship, the various armies, all of the Unity of Heaven realm and Sky Origin stage experts were not much weaker than the Zhuge family. Furthermore, in the Thunderfire dynasty, there were countless experts in the first-rate sects and peak sects. If the Zhuge family really dared to come out, they might not even be able to walk out of the Thunderfire dynasty. Not to mention becoming enemies with all the spirit cultivators in the continent. This was simply courting death. Leng Shiqi would naturally throw himself out first. Zhuge Yun opened his mouth wide and stared blankly at Leng Shiqi. After a long while, he finally reacted. Lu Xingji, this old man can see that you are an ambitious person. It's impossible for you not to be moved. Speak, what conditions do you have? Leng Shiqi laughed in his heart, thinking that this Zhuge Yun was truly an old fox. He turned his face and laughed again. Senior Zhuge is truly insightful. This junior does indeed have a few conditions, but before that, this junior boldly asks, is senior unable to release these people? With that said, Zhuge Yun's expression became somewhat gloomy. The atmosphere in the field paused, and even the air seemed to have solidified. Seeing that Zhuge Yun did not speak, Leng Shiqi knew that his guess was right. If the other party could release those sleeping experts, they would have done so long ago. Why wait until now? Zhuge Yun said in a deep voice, no wonder he has such a high opinion of Lu Yi. You are right. These experts who have fallen into an infinite slumber can only be released by those with a high concentration of Star Clan bloodline. Not only these, but also the various means that the Star Tribe set up back then. That's why I said that only you can lead the Star Tribe back to glory. What I said earlier was indeed a bit too extreme. The Zhuge family has waited for more than 100,000 years for our young friend Lu to appear. I have indeed lost my composure. Just like what our young friend Lu said, with our current strength, it's still wishful thinking to take back the mainland. Therefore, our top priority is to help our young friend Lu completely awaken his bloodline. After that, we'll head to various parts of the mainland to look for the resources left behind by the Star Clan to accumulate more power. Leng Shiqi nodded silently. Zhuge Yun was the one who was speaking in human language. He said, Senior Zhuge is right, but why don't you listen to my conditions first? My young friend Lu, please go ahead. First of all, don't think of me as the son of heaven. Although I have some ambitions, I'm definitely not ambitious enough to become the ruler of the world. Therefore, don't mention about taking back the mainland. In my opinion, we shouldn't have too close a relationship. Otherwise, it won't be good for both of us. To be honest, I've always been a troublesome person. I'm afraid that I'll implicate you one day. Therefore, it's best for us to establish a business relationship. Business relationship? Zhuge Yun frowned. Leng Shiqi explained, that's right. If you want me to do something for you, sure, but you'll have to give me corresponding benefits. On the other hand, if I have something to ask of you, I'll use sufficient rewards to ask for your help. Zhuge Yun waved his hand and said, there's no need for that. My young friend Lu, as long as it's within my ability, I'll definitely do it. However, I only hope that there's a relationship between us where we each take what we need. Senior Zhuge, do you understand what I mean? Leng Shiqi shook his head gently. Zhuge Yun suddenly smiled, so my young friend Lu still doesn't believe me, or are you afraid? Afraid of becoming the enemy of the world? His original intention was to provoke Leng Shiqi, but Leng Shiqi actually admitted it, yes, I'm afraid, very afraid. In this world, there's nothing more precious than my life. Of course, I'm afraid. At this moment, Zhuge Puha transmitted his voice to Zhuge Yun, Elder, Lu Xingji's temperament is like this. why don't we agree to his request and keep him here first? Zhuge Yun hesitated for a moment and said, all right, I can agree to this. Then, can we start the first transaction now? Of course. All right, I can help my young friend Lu completely awaken the power of his bloodline. By then, not only will you have the opportunity to obtain the bloodline inheritance technique, your own talent will also be reborn. However, after that, I'll need your help to release the two people who are in deep sleep. Zhuge Yun told him the content of the transaction. Leng Shiqi did not reject this time and agreed without hesitation. Zhuge Yun also secretly heaved a sigh of relief. He never thought that Leng Shiqi would be so difficult to deal with. He said, the bloodline awakening formation has been set up. My young friend Lu, come with me. Then, the three of them walked into a large hall nearby. There was actually a completely different world inside, and an incomparably majestic array that was at least 10,000 feet in size was set up. There were countless tall silver stone pillars around it, and all kinds of complicated incantations were densely engraved on them. In the center of the formation, a fist-sized, sparkling and translucent starlight gem was constantly flashing with dazzling light. This was the eye of the bloodline awakening formation. Zhuge Yun said, my young friend Lu, go in. Leng Shiqi directly walked into the bloodline awakening formation and sat down cross-legged. At the same time, the eye of the formation suddenly burst out with a blood-colored starlight. A strange power surged into Leng Shiqi's body, and the extremely complicated star atlas on his body lit up. What was even more strange was that this time, the star atlas actually left his body, and suddenly the entire hall became a gorgeous starry sky. Seeing this scene, Zhuge Yun and Zhuge Puha were both shocked. Leng Shiqi's bloodline was stronger than they had expected. Zhuge Yun quickly sat down as well. His hands formed strands of starlight and began to operate the formation. Then, the countless stars that Leng Shiqi released began to fly back into his body one by one. Every time he absorbed a star, his aura would change slightly. The change could not be seen in a short time. It was not a change in the aura of spiritual power or temperament, but an ancient and mysterious aura that seemed to come from eternity. Zhuge Yun was surprised and happy at the same time. He said, my young friend Lu, your bloodline awakening is not something that can be completed in 1 or 2 days. You just need to calm down and adjust your breathing. Chapter 562. 7 days later, Leng Shiqi's figure could no longer be seen in the bloodline formation as the entire hall was filled with dazzling starlight. Strangely, there were streaks of blood floating in the starlight. Zhuge Yun's face looked a little haggard. Even though he was a heavenly origin stage elite, maintaining the bloodline array for a long period of time was too much for him. However, his eyes were filled with excitement. He muttered, even the legendary pure-blooded star clansmen rarely need 7 days to awaken their bloodline. According to the history of the Zhuge clan, the longer one stayed in the bloodline formation, the bigger the commotion, and the purer the star bloodline in one's body would be. The ancestor of the Zhuge clan, Zhuge Xingchen, had seen many star clan members awaken their bloodline. However, there were only a few who could reach Leng Shiqi's level. Only God knew how a star clan member with such a pure bloodline like Leng Shiqi could appear in this era where the power of bloodline had almost disappeared. At this moment, the dense starlight suddenly flowed on its own. Countless stars arranged themselves according to a strange pattern, as if forming lines of words. However, no one had ever seen such words before. Zhuge Yun suddenly opened his eyes wide and exclaimed, "This is the bloodline inherited martial skill." "Elder, what is the bloodline inherited martial skill?" Zhuge Puha asked. He was unfamiliar with the term. Zhuge Yun explained, "It's not your fault that you don't know. It is said that the bloodline inherited martial skill was engraved in the bloodline by the ancestor of the Star clan. This martial skill cannot be passed to outsiders. Only when the bloodline is awakened can it be directly imprinted in one's soul. Moreover, people with different bloodline purity will get different martial skills. However, as long as one can get the bloodline inherited martial skill, he will be heavily nurtured by the Star clan. It's a pity that the Zhuge clan is at most a branch of the Star clan. No matter how high the purity of the bloodline in one's body is, it is impossible to get the bloodline inherited martial skill. This is strange. Lu Xingji is not a pure Star Clan member. How could he get the bloodline inherited martial skill? In the end, even he was puzzled. At the same time, a large amount of information suddenly appeared in Leng Shiqi's mind. Legacy level cultivation method, heavenly cycle star god technique. A system notification appeared before his eyes, discovered the sovereign technique, heavenly cycle star god technique. Do you wish to learn it? Leng Shiqi chose no, without hesitation. Since this was a bloodline inherited cultivation method, he would be able to achieve twice the result with half the effort. There was no need for him to borrow the system. However, he also found out from the system that this cultivation technique was a supreme-level cultivation technique. As far as he knew, cultivation techniques were divided into level 1 to level 9. As for what was higher, he did not know. However, he was certain that the heavenly cycle star god technique was definitely a cultivation technique that surpassed level 9. After he briefly comprehended the cultivation technique, he couldn't help but sigh at how strong this cultivation technique was. It was simply unheard of. The universe star god technique drew upon the energy of the stars in the 9 heavens to temper the body, nurture the soul, and seize the energy of the heavens and the earth. When cultivated to the limit, one could cultivate the universe star god physique, and one could pluck the stars with a raise of one's hand and overturn the heavens and the earth. One's soul could also roam the starry sky, and the laws of the heavens and the earth would be at one's fingertips. As long as the body was not destroyed, the soul would not die. This cultivation technique was different from the current spirit cultivation system, but it was more or less related. He did not have a clear division of realms. The main thing was how many stars were condensed in the body. When he first cultivated this cultivation technique, he could condense a star, which was called a level 1 star. This was the first level. However, if he wanted to advance to the second level, he would need to condense 10 level 1 stars. 10 level 1 stars could fuse into a level 2 star, and so on. 10 level 2 stars could condense into a level 3 star. The highest level of the heavenly cycle star god technique was the 10th level. If he wanted to cultivate this cultivation technique to the limit, the amount of star energy required was simply unimaginable. Leng Shiqi frowned secretly. This cultivation technique was not difficult to cultivate in the beginning, but the difficulty of breaking through to the next level would increase tenfold. When he reached the end, it could be said that it was difficult to advance even a single step. However, he did not want to think about such a distant matter now. Taking advantage of the large amount of spirit energy and star energy in the bloodline array, he planned to try to cultivate the heavenly cycle star god technique. He immediately began to circulate the cultivation technique. No one had ever guided him before, but he circulated it smoothly as if he had cultivated it before. Just as he successfully entered the cultivation technique, the spirit sea in his body suddenly changed. The originally quiet spirit crystal actually began to violently vibrate, but it showed no signs of shattering. Instead, specks of starlight continuously shot out from the star mark, and in a short moment, his spirit sea actually turned into a sea of stars. Not only that, but his spirit sea also underwent a tremendous change. The stars moved, and countless stars suddenly appeared, turning his spirit sea into the spirit sea. In the outside world, all the spirit energy and star energy in the hall began to madly rush into Leng Shiqi's body. He was like a black hole, constantly devouring all the energy. In the spirit sea, a huge star slowly condensed. However, this star looked somewhat illusory and transparent. This was a rank 1 star. This also meant that Leng Shiqi's heavenly cycle star god technique had entered the first level. At the same time, a new spiritual technique suddenly appeared in his memory, Starlight Sword Chi. Leng Shiqi did not pay too much attention to this Starlight Sword Chi. He was not in a hurry to continue cultivating. Instead, he suddenly had a bold and crazy idea. Immediately, with a thought, he circulated the golden mystic yang skill in his body. The illusory star in his spirit sea was gradually dyed with a faint layer of gold. Seeing this scene, Ling Shiqi secretly smiled. It really works. Just now, he thought of the large amount of cultivation techniques and spiritual techniques in his body. Although he was trying his best to merge them, he could not avoid too many of them. After condensing a rank 1 star, he still needed to condense 9 more stars to advance to the second level. Then, could he merge the various cultivation techniques and attributes in his body into those stars? After his initial attempt, he successfully merged the metal attribute cultivation techniques. This seemed to have opened a strange door for him. Then, rank 1 stars of different colors condensed in his spirit sea. These stars represented the attributes of metal, wood, water, fire, earth, ice, wind, thunder, yin, and yang. 10 known attributes in the world were all transformed into stars by Ling Shiqi. After the 10th yin star was formed, based on the wild evil demon blood beast body, the 10 rank 1 stars automatically gathered and began to merge. This process of merging was much easier than Ling Shiqi's own cultivation techniques and spiritual techniques. In just a moment, there was only a rank 2 star left in his spirit sea that was larger and more condensed. However, this star actually did not have any color. There was only a piece of chaos. Chapter 563. Ling Shiqi stared at the chaotic star in a daze. He didn't even notice that the star-shattering finger had appeared in his memory. He thought to himself, the fusion of the 10 elements will actually return to the chaotic star. He vaguely seemed to have grasped something, but the feeling was illusory. The more he wanted to see it clearly, the more he couldn't see it clearly. He panicked, and the strange feeling disappeared without a trace. He blamed himself for being too impatient, but on second thought, he would condense countless chaotic stars in the future. There would be many more opportunities for him to grasp that strange feeling. When he thought of this, he continued to cultivate and absorb energy. First, he condensed 10 rank 1 stars. Then, he gave birth to a second chaos star. As the cycle continued, there were now 10 chaos stars in his sea of consciousness. Then, these stars fused together and gave birth to the first rank 3 star. The third level of the heavenly cycle star god technique. Different from before, although the rank 3 star was also chaotic, there were still traces of starlight flickering from the inside. At the same time, a new spiritual technique, the heavenly star lock, appeared in his mind. He still didn't get distracted because he knew that there was a huge amount of spiritual energy and star power in the bloodline array to help him cultivate. It would be extremely difficult to find such a place after leaving this place. Therefore, he had to use all his time to cultivate the heavenly cycle star god technique. However, this made Zhuge Yun suffer. In fact, Ling Shiqi's bloodline had been successfully awakened the moment the inheritance technique appeared. However, he immediately started cultivating on the spot. This made Zhuge Yun have to maintain the array, which made him suffer. However, Zhuge Yun could also see that Ling Shiqi was at a critical moment in his cultivation. Moreover, the cultivation technique seemed to be going smoothly. He gritted his teeth and held on. Ling Shiqi only took 2 to 4 hours to cultivate to the third level of the heavenly cycle star god technique. However, when he broke through to the 4th level, a day had passed. At this moment, in Ling Shiqi's sea of consciousness, a huge level 4 chaotic star floated. Starlight flickered within it, and he had an additional spiritual technique called Starfall. This time, he paid attention to it. The falling star technique was a very strange spiritual technique. It did not have any grades, and the power of the spiritual technique depended entirely on the realm of the practitioner. This was because meteor fall required one to self-destruct an astral body. The higher the grade of the self-destructing celestial bodies and the greater the number, the greater the power. It could be said that this was a spiritual technique that sacrificed one's cultivation realm. However, one could not self-detonate 3 celestial bodies at the same time. Otherwise, one would lose one's life. Unless it's a matter of life and death, I can't use this star fall technique, he thought to himself. It was also at this moment that some unexpected changes happened to his body. The star mark on the spirit crystal in his body lit up again, and the power of the stars in the hall suddenly condensed. The rich starlight kept shrinking until it was almost liquid, and then slowly circulated around Leng Shiqi. The mysterious star chart on the surface of Leng Shiqi's body appeared again, and directly swallowed the starlight, but the star chart kept flashing. Finally, there was a sonorous sound, and the world shook slightly. An extremely weak trace of the power of heaven and earth penetrated into his body. Leng Shiqi's cultivation aura suddenly skyrocketed, and he actually crossed a big realm and broke through to the spirit gang realm. That's the heavenly cycle star god technique. The bloodline inheritance technique he obtained is the heavenly cycle star god technique. Zhuge Yun was shocked. Leng Shiqi had brought him too much shock. His emotional fluctuations in the past few days were probably not as much as the fluctuations in his emotions in the past few decades. Zhuge Puha was also stunned, and his usual elegance and arrogance were gone. Heavenly cycle star god technique? Is it the supreme technique of the star clan, the heavenly cycle star god technique? Yes, and every generation of star clan leader will improve this technique, and finally integrate it into the spiritual cultivation system of the human clan. The specific grade has long been immeasurable. Zhuge Yun explained. Zhuge Puha also cast an envious look, but not jealous, because the better Leng Shiqi's talent and the stronger his technique, the greater the hope of the star clan rising again. Leng Shiqi also did not expect that he would inexplicably and extremely smoothly break through to the spirit gang realm. Originally, he planned to break through after entering the Tomb of Heaven. The reason was none other than that he was going to use the special characteristics of the Tomb of Heaven to reach the depths of his soul, and see if the consciousness of the system had come back to life. Now, even if he broke through early, he had to give it a try. Immediately, he stopped running his technique, and fully controlled his primordial spirit. Taking the opportunity of stealing a trace of the power of heaven and earth, he sank into the deepest part of his soul. The emerald green eyes of Leng Shiqi's primordial spirit suddenly narrowed. There was indeed another Leng Shiqi here, curled up and sleeping soundly. Obviously, this was the consciousness of the system. It really came back to life. And the consciousness of the system was stronger than last time, both in size and degree of solidification. However, compared to last time, the current Leng Shiqi was stronger. Boom! Leng Shiqi's primordial spirit directly turned into the body of the wild demon blood beast, and the violent, ancient, and evil breath spread out. The consciousness of the system also opened its eyes, which were still emotionless. This time, Leng Shiqi did not talk nonsense with it. He raised his hand and slashed down. A flash of blade light flashed, and time and space stagnated, and the void collapsed. Before the consciousness of the system could react, it was cut into two by Leng Shiqi. At the same time, an invisible blade light stirred into the mind of the consciousness of the system, and completely crushed it into pieces. The familiar black and white light overflowed. Leng Shiqi waved his hand, and the light was sucked into his body. The consciousness of the system seemed to have reacted only when it was on the verge of dissipating, but it could no longer speak. It could only leave a resentful look before it completely disappeared. Leng Shiqi chose to ignore it. This time, he had made ample preparations. With the support of his wild evil demon blood beast body's spiritual energy and the god ephemeral epiphyllum, he swiftly and decisively wiped out the system's consciousness. Immediately, his consciousness returned to his body, and a system prompt appeared in front of him. The system is about to be upgraded. It will take 100 natural days. During the upgrade, the system will not be able to be used. Do you want to upgrade? The familiar system prompt appeared again, but this time, the system upgrade would take more than 3 months. It was somewhat inconvenient. But the upgrade must be upgraded. He transferred the things in the system space into the mustard bracelet, and summoned the Goo King from the pet space and put it in his clothes. Only then did he choose, yes. Administrator, Host 01 requests to upgrade the system. Do you agree? Yes. System upgrade commencing. Progress 0.001%. Chapter 564. After doing all this, Ling Shiqi was about to get up, but at this moment, the word illusion that had been floating in his sea of consciousness suddenly trembled. Then a series of words appeared. This was the follow-up to the 5-God flowing light technique and the accompanying spiritual skills, 5-God illusionary technique and flowing light illusion technique. 5-God illusionary technique was a 6th-level illusionary spiritual skill. It could be divided into 5 parts, and the body could freely shuttle between the illusions. Unless the opponent's spiritual power was far superior, it would be difficult to distinguish the real from the fake. Flowing light illusion technique was a 6th-level illusion technique. This illusion technique was not offensive, but its greatest effect was to confuse the mind of the victim, and even to control the victim to a certain extent. What he cared about was that Meng Tianzong's consciousness seemed to have disappeared. At this moment, Ling Shiqi regretted upgrading the system. He should have cultivated the 5-God illusionary technique and flowing light illusion technique before upgrading the system, including the spiritual skills that came with the heavenly cycle star God technique. However, Ling Shiqi gave it some thought. His talent in mental illusions was already pretty good. Moreover, he also had the star bloodline. Even if he relied on his own ability to cultivate, it wouldn't be difficult. He could also begin to adapt to the 100 days without the system. Seeing that Ling Shiqi stopped cultivating, Zhuge Yun no longer maintained the formation. He walked forward slightly weakly and said, "Congratulations on successfully awakening the star bloodline and obtaining the inheritance technique. This is all thanks to Senior Zhuge. Please give me the technique, and I will help you release the 2 Zhuge ancestors." Ling Shiqi said politely and then got down to business. Zhuge Yun stretched out his finger and wrote the technique in the air. He said, "You can comprehend it by yourself. I will go and rest for a while." Ling Shiqi nodded and began to comprehend the nameless technique. More than 2 hours later, he moved his hands and released starlight. From the starry sky, 2 stars fell. 2 Zhuge ancestors who were in the realm of oneness of heaven and man were sleeping in them. The starlight grew dimmer and dimmer until it completely disappeared. The 2 of them floated down to the ground and stood upright. There was no aura coming from their bodies, making them look like 2 zombies. Ling Shiqi changed his hand seal, and the spirit energy in his body was rapidly extracted. When the 2 people began to slowly recover, his spirit energy had been depleted by 70 to 80%. It seemed that the price to awaken these sleeping experts was not small. The 2 of them opened their eyes at the same time, but their eyes were empty. Ling Shiqi actually felt a faint connection with the 2 of them. Zhuge Yun felt the attraction of the spiritual energy fluctuation and walked over. At this time, his complexion was a little better. "Little friend Lu, they have just woken up. It will take some time for them to regain their consciousness. Moreover, they will completely obey your orders. Even if you ask them to commit suicide, they will not hesitate." "I see, then how do we hand them over to Senior?" Ling Shiqi asked. Zhuge Yun said, "It doesn't matter. Little friend, you only need to let them go to the Starfall dynasty and the Northern Wei dynasty respectively to search for the remains of the Star clan. If they find anything, just report it to me." "No problem. In this case, can I leave?" The time he took to come here was far beyond his expectation. The 29 guards might have returned to the imperial capital. Unexpectedly, Zhuge Yun shook his head and said, "Little friend, don't worry. Now, we might as well make another deal." Ling Shiqi raised his eyebrows. "Senior, please go ahead." Their first deal allowed him to obtain the supreme cultivation method of Heavenly Star God and break through to the gang's spirit realm. He was very interested in making another deal. "I have mentioned before that our Zhuge clan has been searching for the remains of the Star clan and the contingency left behind by them for a long time. Unfortunately, there are too few people in the Zhuge clan, and the scope of our search is mainly within the Lei Yan dynasty. Although we have found a lot, we can't explore them without pure bloodline. The tricky thing is that some of the secret treasures have long been occupied by some sections. Although they can't open them, they have to keep them. Therefore, most of the places can't be explored for the time being. I have a recently discovered secret treasure here, and I would like to invite you to explore it." The reward is that you can choose any 3 things inside. Zhuge Yun told him the content of the deal. Leng Shiqi felt that this deal was doable, but of course, he had to make sure before agreeing. He asked, "Senior, may I ask where that place is? Is there any danger in it? This secret treasure is in the Ningyang County. There must be danger in it, but you have such pure bloodline of the Star Clan. You will be safe." Zhuge Yun said as he took out a jade slip. The specific location of the secret treasure is recorded in it. According to what Zhuge Yun said, Leng Shiqi only needed to run errands. It seemed to be a profitable deal. Ningyang County. Leng Shiqi murmured. Ningyang County was a county near the west of the Lei dynasty. It was a relatively ancient place, and it was said that it was one of the origins of the human race. Until now, there were still many forces in the form of tribes in Ningyang County. Dichuan came from Ningyang County. However, the problem was that Ningyang County was relatively far away. If he went there for no reason, it would inevitably arouse suspicion. "Alright, I am willing to make this deal, but I'm afraid I won't have time to go there in the near future." He hesitated for a moment, but still agreed. At most, he would wait for an opportunity to take a mission that required him to go to Ningyang County. Zhuge Yun laughed. It's fine. I have waited for almost my entire life. I am not in a hurry." Leng Shiqi took the jade slip and said, "Then I will take my leave first." Then, Zhuge Yun raised his hand and set up a small formation. "Go ahead." Leng Shiqi cupped his hands at the 2 of them, walked into the teleportation formation, and disappeared. Zhuge Yun looked at the place where Leng Shiqi disappeared. His eyes flickered, and no one knew what he was thinking. After a while, he suddenly sighed, "This boy is really unpredictable. Not to mention you, even this old man can't see through him. I can see that he is an ambitious man. Even if he is unwilling to be too deeply involved with the Star Tribe, he could have awakened a few experts in the unity of heaven and man realm or the heavenly origin realm to help him achieve his ambition. It would have been easy for him to establish a sect or fight for power. However, he did not do so. In the face of such a huge temptation, he could still maintain his original intention. This kind of person who can control his own ambition is the most terrifying. Puha, I may not be able to see the day when the Star Tribe rises. Only if you wholeheartedly assist him, you may be able to see that day. Elder. What do you mean? Zhuge Puha was slightly flustered. Zhuge Yun smiled kindly and said, "Lu Xingji will not do things that he is not confident in. Even if he has enough power and influence in the future to lead the Star Tribe to rise again, I am afraid it will be a long time later. I am afraid I will not be able to hold on until then. Alright, you should return to the imperial capital and cut off contact with Lu Xingji." "Yes, I understand." Zhuge Puha looked very well behaved at this time, and actually looked a little like a child. Then, he opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something. However, in the end, he did not say anything and was teleported out. There was only Zhuge Yun left. He stared blankly at the place where Zhuge Puha disappeared. However, gradually, his lips curled into a strange smile. At the same time, his eyes revealed traces of the netherworld energy. Chapter 565. For Leng Shiqi, the reason why he could ignore the experts was because he did not trust Zhuge Yun. He had only met Zhuge Yun once, and everything he had said was just a one-sided story. It was still unknown whether Zhuge Yun wanted to reappear the Star Clan or fulfill his own ambitions. Besides, Leng Shiqi could also bring out a few experts in the unity of heaven and man realm. Even so, it was enough for him to dominate. However, the problem was that the Zhuge family's techniques were too iconic. It was easy to see through their origins. In the future, if Zhuge Yun really wanted to conquer the world, Leng Shiqi would be seen as an accomplice. That was why Leng Shiqi resisted the greed in his heart and did not bring out any experts. When Leng Shiqi returned to the imperial capital, an extremely old man with a weak face was leaning on a dragon bed in the imperial palace. He was the person with the highest authority in the Thunderfire dynasty, Lei Qingjun. Beside him, a person bowed slightly with his hands clasped behind his back. This person was Eunuch Gao. Lei Qingjun held 3 memorials in his hands. In fact, all 3 memorials reported the same thing, which was the process of how Leng Shiqi annihilated the Thunder Alliance and the Sky Crane Gang. However, these reports were sent from the Slaughtering King's residence, the Discipline Commission of Shantai Prefecture, and the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guards. More than 80% of the contents were similar. As for the remaining similarities and differences, they were naturally just flattering themselves. Lei Qingjun immediately saw through the clues, but this was a common occurrence. He slowly said, "Little Gao, you've taken in a good disciple." In this world, only Lei Qingjun could call Eunuch Gao Little Gao. Eunuch Gao prepared his words in an instant and said, "It's all thanks to you, master. All right, you've been with me for so long. How can I not understand you? You're just paving a way out for yourself. It's not just you. Many people are doing this." Lei Qingjun's voice became weaker as he spoke. So what if he knew? He could only struggle at death's door. The only thing he could do was to pave the way for the Thunderfire dynasty. This was to prevent any unforeseen events from happening after his death. Lei Qingjun looked at the memorial again and said, "This Lu Xingji did a good job. He suppressed the Thunder Alliance with lightning speed and massacred the Sky Crane Gang. After news of this spread out, those rats hiding in the dark won't dare to come out for a short period of time. This can be considered as sharing some of my burden. You can decide how you want to reward him. Go." "I understand." Eunuch Gao bowed and left. Lei Qingjun continued to pick up a memorial beside him. Beside him, there was a huge pile of memorials. Before Eunuch Gao left, he also took a deep look at Lei Qingjun. Lei Qingjun's illness was already incurable. Therefore, Leng Shiqi did not hide anything. On the contrary, on the way back, he took time to condense the spirit astral realm with the red gold earth dragon flame to cover the heavenly star astral wind. The pure gold earth dragon flame was a natural counter to demons and ghosts. Even Eunuch Gao's cold nether scripture was suppressed by it. He immediately frowned and said, "You are quite lucky to be able to refine the heavenly flame. You must have refined it after the elite meeting, right? You don't need to explain. I won't ask about your own luck. However, since you are my disciple, you should learn something from me." Speaking of this, Eunuch Gao threw over a mustard seed bag. There is the nether chi in it. You can use it to condense the nether spirit astral wind. There are also the follow-up exercises of the Cold Hell book and the matching spiritual skills. It is your reward for breaking through to the gang spirit realm. Leng Shiqi immediately bowed and said, "Thank you, master. This is just the reward for your progress in cultivation. In this trip to Shantai Prefecture, Li Jueqing secretly played tricks on you, but you still overfulfilled the task. You did a good job." It was rare for Eunuch Gao to praise someone directly, but he suddenly asked, "However, do you know what your greatest contribution is?" In this trip to Shantai Prefecture, Leng Shiqi had done a lot of things in the shortest time. Of course, the greatest contribution was to wipe out the Thunder League and the Sky Crane Gang. But then again, why would Eunuch Gao ask such a well-known question? Leng Shiqi pondered for a moment and said, "My greatest contribution should be to wipe out the treacherous Thunder League." Wiping out the Thunder League and the treacherous Thunder League were two different things. If the Thunder League was just a simple organization, even if Leng Shiqi succeeded in the task, it would just be a normal contribution. At most, people would think highly of him. However, at the critical moment of the Thunderous Dynasty, he killed the Thunder League at the time of rebellion. The nature of this was completely different. What kind of contribution was this? This was quelling a rebellion. Even 10 tasks added together were far less than this huge contribution. After this matter was done, the Dark Thunder Guards of Shantai Prefecture, the Discipline Department, the Slaughtering King's Mansion and Eunuch Gao all received a great reward. And this matter gradually spread in the Thunderous Dynasty. Lu Xingji's name was also remembered by many people, which was a great boost to his reputation. Eunuch Gao nodded and said, Yes, you saw it clearly. So His Majesty gave you a great reward. Chapter 566. Leng Shiqi smiled secretly. The reward was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that he had made a contribution. He finally gained a foothold in the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guards. With this contribution, he had broken through to the gang's spirit realm. His strength had improved a lot, and he could take over the position of the Commissioner of Internal Supervisor. Of course, he had to ask for the reward. He said, "Master, what reward did His Majesty give me?" Eunuch Gao asked back, "What kind of reward do you want?" Leng Shiqi was slightly stunned. Could he take the initiative to ask for a reward? But since Eunuch Gao said so, he would definitely talk nonsense. He quickly thought about it. He had just broken through and was not short of cultivation methods and spiritual skills. If he had to say what he needed most, it was undoubtedly a spiritual weapon. He was not short of sabers and swords. The only thing he lacked was a 6th-level spiritual spear. Jintao's Stormy Wave spear was powerful, but every time he used it, it lacked a little power. The most important reason was that he did not have a 6th-level spiritual spear. In addition, what he lacked most was time. After breaking through to the gang's spirit realm, he opened the door to a new world, because he could condense many different attributes of gang spirit, such as blood-refining evil gang, divine fantasy gang, cold gang, and so on. Furthermore, there were still many spiritual techniques that he had yet to cultivate. For example, there were spiritual techniques that came with the Heavenly Cycle Star God technique and the 5-God Flowing Light technique. There were also spiritual techniques that he could cultivate in the Cold Nether Treasure Manual, Nirvana Remnant Wind Scroll, and Purple Pole Thunderclap Record. So he needed a period of time to settle down and practice. So he said, "I want a 6th-level spiritual spear, and I want to practice in seclusion for a while." That's it? On the contrary, Eunuch Gao was a little surprised. He was very clear that Leng Shiqi was definitely a very greedy person. This time, he had given him the opportunity to take the initiative to ask for a reward, but he only asked for a 6th-tier spirit spear. A 6th-level spiritual weapon might be hard to come by outside, but for Eunuch Gao, it was really nothing. As the saying goes, those who are content are happy. That's all I want. What's more, Master has already given me the order of Internal Supervisor. I plan to take over as the Commissioner of Internal Supervisor after I finish my practice. This is the best reward. Leng Shiqi said frankly, as if money was nothing. Hee hee. Eunuch Gao laughed dryly. Do as you wish. Take out your token and I'll give you 20,000 merit points. A grade 6 spirit spear is probably worth around 10,000 merit points. Take my token and go to the treasury to choose. As for the rest, I'll give it to you as compensation. As for the closed-door training, I can only give you 2 months at most. You also know that the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guard is extremely busy, and I also have some things for you to do. 2 months is the limit. Leng Shiqi naturally didn't have a choice. He could only agree. Then he came to the treasury of the headquarters of Dark Thunder Guards, which was a deep hall. 2 guards of Gang's spirit realm stopped him. He took out Eunuch Gao's token, and the 2 men confirmed it for a while before one of them led him into the main hall. There was nothing else in the hall except for a huge bronze door. The man took out several tokens in a row and struggled for a long time to open the door. It was very large inside, with all kinds of resources piled up like mountains, but the quality was not good. Leng Shiqi looked around and found that the highest level was only the 4th or 5th level. At the end, there was a large door. What was different was that this door was pitch black, and it faintly emitted a terrifying spiritual energy fluctuation. The man who led him in struggled for a long time and finally opened the door. As soon as the door was opened a crack, Leng Shiqi felt the spiritual light and treasure chi blowing on his face. There are grade 5 and grade 6 resources in here. You can choose by yourself, but I have to watch here. Leng Shiqi nodded and went straight to the area where spiritual weapons were placed. Most of them were grade 5 spiritual weapons, and there were only a few grade 6 ones, but there were about 40 or 50 of them. He didn't want to waste time, so he directly found 4 grade 6 spirit spears. He was looking for a spiritual weapon that matched with the golden wave spear, so he quickly made a choice. This spirit spear was dark blue and looked gentle like water, and there was a trace of water flowing on the body of the spear. Grade 6 spirit weapon, Gui water formation spear. If he wanted to exchange for the Gui water formation spear, he needed 11,000 merit points, which Ling Shiqi could accept. Now he had 9,000 merit points left. Since he was already here, he planned to see if there was anything else he needed. For spirit cultivators in the spirit astral realm, there were also pills to speed up cultivation, called Tiangang pill. This pill could not only speed up cultivation, but also continue to temper the spirit astral realm and improve the power. However, this Tiangang pill was already a grade 6 spirit pill, and masters who could refine it were also rare, which led to the Tiangang pill being a kind of product that was not for sale. You couldn't buy it at all in ordinary spirit cultivator shops. In a place like the imperial capital, you might be able to find a shop with Tiangang pill, but most of the shops would not sell it easily. They were more willing to barter. If you really wanted to buy it with spirit stones, you could only go to an auction to try your luck. The last time Ling Shiqi participated in the Celestial Treasure Enterprise auction, the Tiangang pill was also auctioned, but at that time, Ling Shiqi did not need to use it, so he did not care too much. He also found a Tiangang pill here. Good heavens, one pill cost 3,000 merit points. One had to know that although the Tiangang pill and the Gui water formation spear were both grade 6 resources, the pill was only a one-time use item, while the spirit weapon could be used for a long time, so the price was completely different. The Tiangang pill actually cost 3,000 merit points, which was a bit exaggerated. According to Ling Shiqi's knowledge, he Fei Chen and the others could only get a few hundred merit points from doing a mission. It could be seen that the Tiangang pill was indeed very precious. He reached out and took the 3 Tiangang pills. The 20,000 merit points that he had just received were instantly reset to 0, which made him somewhat helpless. After exchanging for the Gui water formation spear and the Tiangang pill, Ling Shiqi headed back. Who knew that when he returned to the courtyard of the 29th Guard Division, he would see a person sitting on a stone bench in the courtyard. That person was Lian Yi. Seeing Lian Yi, Ling Shiqi knew that the other party had come to collect a debt. Sure enough, when Lian Yi saw Ling Shiqi walk in, she said in a strange tone, "Lord Lu, I have heard of your great name often recently. You just came to the Dark Thunder Guard headquarters and killed the Inspector Wei Xiangming. You even showed off at the auction and bought a beauty and dual cultivation technique at a high price. TSK, you really have good luck with women. Recently, you even made a miraculous contribution in Shantai County. Lord Lu, no matter where you go, you can't hide your brilliance. I just don't know if the famous Lord Lu still remembers the conditions he agreed to back then." Ling Shiqi acted as if he did not hear the mockery in Lian Ye's words. He smiled and said, "So it is Lady Lian Yi. I haven't seen you for a long time, and you have become even more charming. I never go back on my promises. If Lady Lian Yi has any requests, please tell me." Chapter 567. Back then, when Lian Yi caught Ling Shiqi's identity, Ling Shiqi promised her something in order to stabilize her. Of course, this favor had to be returned. However, he didn't promise her anything. He still wanted to see what Lian Yi wanted to say first. Lian Yi gave him a supercilious look. "Lord Lu, do you plan on letting me stand here in the cold wind?" Ling Shiqi immediately felt a headache. It was clearly Lian Yi who was sitting here like a lord. However, he still made a "please" gesture and said, "Lady Lian Yi, please come in." The two walked into the conference hall and Lian Yi set up a restriction. It seemed that the matter she wanted to say was not simple. As soon as she made a move, Ling Shiqi could tell that she had just entered the spirit aperture realm. Considering her age, her cultivation speed was very fast. Lian Yi also sensed that Ling Shiqi was spying on her cultivation realm. She also subconsciously tried to sense Ling Shiqi's realm, but she couldn't sense it. The only explanation was that Ling Shiqi's cultivation had surpassed her by a whole realm. You broke through to the spirit astral realm? Lian Yi exclaimed. Ling Shiqi said indifferently, I just broke through recently. His tone was as indifferent as if he had eaten this morning. However, the more this tone was, the more Lian Yi felt like she was going crazy. When the two of them met in the illusory spirit's secret realm, they were both in the spirit pulse realm. Only a few years had passed, and there was already a whole realm difference between them. Lian Yi grew up with the title of a blessed girl. In the entire imperial capital, the only girl who was stronger than her in terms of cultivation talent was Moe Lu. In fact, with her current age and cultivation, she would be outstanding even in the top sections. However, she met a freak like Ling Shiqi. Right, I remember that you entered the dragon vein to cultivate. No wonder your cultivation progressed so fast. Lian Yi suddenly thought of this and immediately whispered, No, I have to let foster father take me to the dragon vein to cultivate. Ling Shiqi's heart skipped a beat. He still didn't know Lian Ye's specific identity. From Lian Ye's words, her foster father seemed to be a big shot. How could one enter the dragon vein just because they wanted to? What kind of person could directly arrange for people to enter the dragon vein? Instead of thinking blindly, he might as well ask directly. Miss Lian Yi, may I know your identity in the Dark Thunder Guard? Who would have thought that Lian Yi would bluntly glance at him and say, What does it have to do with you? Let's get down to business. Ling Shiqi couldn't help but rub his nose. It seems like you're the one who changed the topic, right? What instructions does Miss Lian Yi have? Please speak. Actually, it's not a big deal. Lian Yi sat down and said casually, I just want you to help me assassinate someone. Cough. Ling Shiqi coughed dryly. How could he say that killing someone was not a big deal? Moreover, Lian Ye's identity was definitely not simple. The person she wanted to kill was naturally not ordinary either. He had to ask clearly about this matter. He frowned and said, Miss Lian Yi, when we were in Donglin City, I made it very clear that if the matter is beyond my ability, it won't do. I know. Don't worry. The person I want you to assassinate is only in the spiritual pulse realm. You are now in the gang's spirit realm. Isn't it a piece of cake? Lian Yi said easily. For the current Ling Shiqi, the spiritual pulse realm was indeed easy to kill, but he still asked worriedly, Who is that person? What's his identity? Lian Yi glanced at Ling Shiqi inexplicably and said, The person you want to assassinate is called Lei Haoqing, the 9th prince of the Thunder Flame dynasty. Hearing this, Ling Shiqi suddenly felt confused. He stared at Lian Yi with extremely complicated eyes. Was this girl stupid? How dare she assassinate the 9th prince of the dynasty? And she wanted him to assassinate him? Unless he was tired of living, he wouldn't assassinate a prince. However, Ling Shiqi quickly calmed down and asked tentatively, Are you joking, Miss Lian Yi? Of course I'm not joking. Don't look at me like that. I'm telling the truth. Lian Yi shook her head. Ling Shiqi immediately shouted to the door, Come, see the guest out. Lian Yi also screamed, Lu Xingji. What do you mean? Do you want to break your promise? Ling Shiqi sneered, Miss Lian Yi, there's a limit to joking. Assassinate a prince? Do you think there are no masters around the prince? Besides, even if you really kill the 9th prince, do you think they won't find out that it was you or me? Miss Lian Yi, you'd better find someone else to do such a suicidal act. Pitiful Lian Yi suddenly said innocently, I didn't say I was going to kill Lei Haoqing. Ling Shiqi paused. A mouthful of blood was stuck in his throat, making him feel extremely uncomfortable. Lian Ye's eyes flashed with cunning, I just said I was going to assassinate Lei Haoqing, but I didn't say I had to kill him. Only then did Ling Shiqi realize that he seemed to have been played. I don't know what Miss Lian Yi is planning. Assassinating a prince is a crime punishable by death. I definitely can't agree to it, he said firmly. Does Lord Lu not want to hear the details? It might even be beneficial to you, Lian Yi said as she blinked her watery eyes. At this moment, Lin Shiqi finally realized that this Lian Yi was getting more and more difficult to deal with. Then, Miss Lian Yi, please make the long story short. At this time, Lian Ye's tone also became heavy. I don't know what wrong medicine that Lei Haoqing took. A long time ago, he often came to bother me. Recently, he went to find my foster father to propose marriage. What's annoying is that although my adoptive father didn't agree, he didn't explicitly refuse either. Who doesn't know what Lei Haoqing is thinking? He just wants to rope in my adoptive father as a bargaining chip to fight for the throne. But why doesn't he look in the mirror? He doesn't have talent, he doesn't have shrewdness, and he doesn't have ability. Just based on his glib tongue, he wants to take me as his wife and rope in my adoptive father? Even Prince Ing and Prince Qi couldn't rope in my adoptive father. Just based on him, he wants to fight for the throne? What wishful thinking. Lin Shiqi understood the cause of the matter. He also heard two key points from Lian Ye's words. One was that the ninth Prince Lei Haoqing's ability was average and wasn't thought highly of. The other was that Lian Ye's adoptive father was definitely a powerful figure. Even those princes would fight to win him over. Lian Yi continued, I'm not asking you to actually assassinate him. I'm just putting on an act to let him know that he can be in danger at any time. He should stay at home and stop bothering me. So it was like that. Lin Shiqi couldn't help but secretly ridicule. Why didn't you just say it from the start? Why did you have to take a few deep breaths? However, even if it was just for show, he still wouldn't agree. Assassinating a prince is a serious matter. I really can't do it. Miss Lian Yi, please change the condition. Lian Yi revealed an expression that said she already knew this would happen. She slightly raised her neck like a proud swan and said, My adoptive father is the commander of the Dark Thunder Guards, Heavenly Sovereign He Yan. Chapter 568. Lin Shiqi was shocked. He never thought that the foster father Lian Yi spoke of was actually the commander of the Dark Thunder Guards, Heavenly Sovereign He Yan. No one knew the name of the commander. Lin Shiqi had only occasionally heard people mention that the commander was called Heavenly Sovereign He Yan, but it seemed that no one had ever seen him before. The Grand Commander rarely attended the annual meetings. Even if he did attend, he wouldn't come in person. Therefore, this Grand Commander was very mysterious. Lin Shiqi also thought that Lian Ye's identity was not simple, but he never thought that she was the foster daughter of the commander. No wonder she could participate in the elite meeting with the identity of a late-stage spirit pulse realm cultivator. No wonder she said that her foster father could send her to the dragon vein. No wonder those princes worked so hard to rope her in. That was the commander of the Dark Thunder Guards. He was in charge of the tens of thousands of Dark Thunder Guards and all the most secretive information in the Thunderfire dynasty. Perhaps no one in the Thunderfire dynasty knew more secrets than him. Perhaps even the current emperor did not know many secrets, but Heavenly Sovereign He Yan knew. His existence was not only a threat to outsiders, but also a deterrent in terms of information. If any prince could rope an Empyrean black flame, they would be able to casually find the filthy things that the other princes had done and easily topple them. It could be said that as long as they could rope in Heavenly Sovereign He Yan, it was equivalent to obtaining half the throne. But then again, not to mention roping in Heavenly Sovereign He Yan, it was extremely difficult to even see him normally. It was unknown how Lei Haoqing met Heavenly Sovereign He Yan and felt that his chances were very high, so he kept pestering Lian Yi. Lian Yi did not have many subordinates. Although there were some people who followed her, it was impossible to count on them to assassinate Lei Haoqing. Therefore, she planned to find Lin Shiqi. However, Lin Shiqi was stubborn. She could only bring out her foster father, Heavenly Sovereign He Yan. She did not believe that he would not yield. Lian Yi proudly said, As long as you help me this time, the previous favor will be written off. I can even put in a few good words for you in front of foster father. Even if his old self has a slightly better impression of you, it will still be a great reward. Lian Yi was right. If Lin Shiqi could establish a relationship with this mysterious commander through Lian Yi, the benefits would be unimaginable. But then again, was assassinating a prince a joke? If he wasn't careful, he would get himself into trouble. He pondered for a moment and said, Miss Lian Yi, it's not that we can't do this, but we must formulate a perfect plan. We absolutely can't expose that it was us who did it. Lian Yi gently smiled, inwardly thinking that the other party had indeed submitted to the might of Empyrean Black Flame. She confidently said, I already have a pretty good plan. Looks like Miss Lian Yi came prepared. I'm all ears. The plan is very simple. I've already found out that Lei Haoqing will be leaving the Imperial City in a few days. At that time, you'll disguise yourself as an assassin and intercept him. Then, you'll just need to make a few gestures and run away. Hearing this, Ling Shiqi's head began to hurt again. Do you think Lei Haoqing will leave the Imperial City by himself? He will definitely have experts protecting him. Moreover, once he makes a move, how can he just walk away like that? If the system hadn't been upgraded, he could have used the fate skill to teleport away. But now that the system map was closed, the teleportation skill couldn't be used. Lian Ye's plan was too easy. Ling Shiqi was just about to refute when he keenly caught sight of the craftiness in Lian Ye's eyes. He immediately understood. Miss Lian Yi, please tell me the details of the plan. It's best if you don't tell me half of it. Tisk, boring. Lian Yi rolled her eyes and continued, I've already asked around. This time, Lei Haoqing is going to Pinghui County to rope in the Thousand Illusion Sword sect. This matter is known by the other princes, so Lei Haoqing's trip won't be very smooth. Perhaps the other princes also want to assassinate Lei Haoqing, but they definitely won't dare to do it in the provinces near the Imperial City. This is because the Imperial City is the most important place for the hidden Thunder Guards. There are many hidden Thunder Guards everywhere. I think Lei Haoqing also feels that no one dares to assassinate him near the Imperial City. We'll do the exact opposite. When the time comes, I'll transfer away the hidden Thunder Guards in that area and prepare an opportunity for you to act. I'll also investigate the strength of Lei Haoqing's guards. I won't let you easily take risks. After the matter is done, the other princes will definitely be the suspects and not me. Lei Haoqing's courage isn't much to begin with. After being assassinated, he'll definitely hide for a period of time. Naturally, he won't have time to bother me. Lian Yi spoke of her complete plan. At first glance, it seemed pretty good, but in Ling Shiqi's eyes, it was still full of flaws. Without mentioning the first part, if Ling Shiqi really managed to escape, then there would be many flaws in the follow-up. For example, everyone knew that no one dared to assassinate Lei Haoqing near the Imperial City. Thus, it was very easy for people to think that someone might have deliberately shifted the blame to the other princes to muddy the waters. There might even be people who guessed that perhaps this assassination was arranged by Lei Haoqing himself. Regardless of which it was, the entire Imperial City would thoroughly investigate this matter. Also, although Lian Yi could transfer away the hidden Thunder Guards, this matter couldn't be easily discovered. Unless Celestial Venerable He Yen personally covered it up for her, it would be exposed sooner or later. If Celestial Venerable He Yen really did this, then he could also directly warn Lei Haoqing to stop bothering Lian Yi. Thus, it was clear that this was Lian Yi acting on her own initiative. At the same time, Ling Shiqi couldn't help but admire Lian Yi. She actually thought of a way to assassinate a prince so that she wouldn't be bothered. Could it be that she didn't know how sensitive the current situation was? The slightest movement could lead to great chaos. If he had to give an evaluation of Lian Ye's plan, Ling Shiqi could only say that it wasn't reliable. Lian Yi saw Ling Shiqi's bitter expression and immediately became unhappy. I know that this plan isn't that great. If you have a better plan, you can tell me directly. Ling Shiqi thought hard for a while, then asked, Lei Haoqing would need at least 1 or 2 months to go to Pinghui Prefecture and return. That way, wouldn't you have some peace and quiet? Why would you want to assassinate him? Moreover, as long as he doesn't win over the Grand Commander, he definitely won't give up. Thus, your plan is only treating the symptoms and not the root cause. You make it sound nice. Do you have a better plan? Ling Shiqi said, I do. You really do? Tell me. Lian Yi hurriedly said. A two-pronged approach. Ling Shiqi extended 2 fingers and said, I can give Lei Haoqing some warning and trouble halfway, but it definitely won't be an assassination. This will make him focus more on the struggle for power. However, the root of this problem is still you, Miss Lian Yi. Me? Lian Yi pointed at herself. That's right. If you want Lei Haoqing to completely give up on you, it's very simple. You just have to find someone to marry. Chapter 569. Marry? Lian Yi suddenly screamed. Fortunately, she had set up a restriction in advance. Otherwise, no one would know what was going on inside. Absolutely impossible. What kind of rotten idea is this? Her face was full of unwillingness. Ling Shiqi said carefully, Miss Lian Yi, let me ask you a question first. Which prince do you think the commander will stand on? This. Lian Yi frowned. She thought for a while and shook her head. I don't know. Then let me answer you. As the commander of the Dark Thunder Guards, Heavenly Venerable He Yan will not support any prince. Ling Shiqi said in a deep voice. The position of the commander of the Dark Thunder Guards is too important. In the struggle for the throne, he must remain neutral and only be loyal to His Majesty. Otherwise, the first to die will definitely be the commander. Therefore, no matter how much Lei Haoqing pesters you, it is impossible to win over the commander. From the commander's point of view, the only way to establish a relationship with him is through you, Miss Lian Yi. If Lei Haoqing gives up this time, then there will be other princes pestering you next time. The only way to resolve this matter once and for all is for you to have a partner. You don't have to marry. You can find someone pleasing to the eye to act as a shield. Once this matter is settled, you will also save the commander a lot of trouble. It can be said to be killing many birds with one stone. After hearing this, Lian Yi fell into deep thought. Ling Shiqi naturally hoped that Lian Yi would accept his suggestion. This way, he would at most harass Lei Haoqing, then he could go into seclusion to cultivate. After a while, Lian Yi said, You are right. My considerations were too simple. Now there is a change in the plan. Since Lei Haoqing wants to go to the Thousand Illusion Sword sect, let him go. When he comes back, you can make your move. This way, I can have some peace and quiet for a long time. Moreover, I have also thought of a way for you. I will go to the Blood Clothing Pavilion and issue a mission to assassinate the hidden Thunder Guards. You can also pretend to be an assassin of the Blood Clothing Pavilion to assassinate Lei Haoqing and put all the blame on the Blood Clothing Pavilion. In any case, the Blood Clothing Pavilion will not reveal their employer's information. This way, we will be safe. As for finding a shield, let me think about it. At this moment, Ling Shiqi's heart was on the verge of breaking down. He had been going around in circles for a long time, and now, he was going to get himself involved. Pretending to be an assassin of the Blood Garment Pavilion? Lian Yi would never have imagined that the person standing before her was a genuine Blood Garment Pavilion assassin. In terms of strength, Ling Shiqi could be called a golden-striped blood-clothed assassin. Now, in order to return Lian Ye's favor, the Blood Garment Pavilion was accused of assassinating a prince. However, this was indeed a good idea. It would allow him to hide his current identity to the greatest extent. He would also be able to shift his attention to the blood-clad pavilion. In the eyes of outsiders, only the assassins of the Blood Garment Pavilion could accept a mission like assassinating a prince. Moreover, everyone knew that the Blood Garment Pavilion was just a sword in someone else's hand. The most important thing was to find the real culprit behind the scenes, so they would not really go against the Blood Garment Pavilion. Ling Shiqi nodded and said, The method is fine, but before that, I must obtain detailed information about Lei Haoqing's guards. At that time, if there is any danger, I will retreat. Whether or not I assassinate him is not important. The most important thing is to make Lei Haoqing feel lingering fear. If Miss Lian Yi can agree, I will take the risk and make this trip. Seeing that Ling Shiqi was finally about to agree, Lian Yi immediately said, "Okay, it's a deal." "It's a deal." Leng Shiqi said, "During this time, I will be in seclusion at the 29th Guard Division. When the time comes, Miss Lian Yi can send someone to find me." Lian Yi smiled and said, "Then I will not disturb Lord Lu's cultivation. I will take my leave first." Leng Shiqi cupped his hands and sent Lian Yi away. He had a headache and thought to himself that it was best not to owe a debt of gratitude. It was really too troublesome. Thinking of this, he suddenly remembered that he still owed Eunuch Gao a big favor. He did not know what Eunuch Gao would ask him to do. Leng Shiqi shook his head and threw away the messy thoughts. Then he called He Feichen and said a few words before entering the secret room to begin his seclusion. He needed to do 3 things in this seclusion. First, he needed to consolidate his cultivation. Then, he needed to condense various kinds of spirit highland. Spirit cultivators in the spirit astral realm used their own spirit power as the foundation. In addition, they used external objects to steal a trace of the power of heaven and earth to condense spirit highland. Therefore, the spirit astral realm was much stronger than the spirit aperture realm. For example, he used the crimson gold earth dragon flames to condense the crimson gold dragon flames. Even if he did not consume the power of the fire seed, as long as he used his spirit power, he could display 30 to 40% of the power of the crimson gold earth dragon flames. It must be known that every time he used the crimson gold earth dragon flames, the fire seed would weaken very quickly. This meant that he could not use the crimson gold earth dragon flames for a long time and could only use it as a trump card. However, the crimson gold dragon flames was completely different. As long as he had enough spirit power, he could use it wantonly. Moreover, 30 to 40% of its power was already shocking enough. It was far stronger than ordinary fire attribute spirit highland by several times. Next, he planned to condense the cold nether spirit highland. After all, Eunuch Gao had already prepared the materials. It was the most convenient. In addition, he also had the wind and thunder power absorbed from the wind-thunder divine luck stone. It was also a part of the power of heaven and earth. It could be used to condense wind and thunder attribute spirit highland. The blood slaughter 7 fiend art and 5 god flowing light art were relatively special cultivation methods. The blood slaughter 7 fiend art could cultivate the blood refining fiend art, but it did not need to rely on external objects. It needed to feed on one's own blood essence. After cultivating it, every move consumed one's blood essence. It had a strong burst of power, but the disadvantage was that it could not be used for a long time. But for an assassin, it was a one-hit kill. If it was a protracted battle, it meant that one had already failed. The 5 god flowing light art directly communicated with heaven and earth through spiritual power. From there, one could condense the divine dream spirit highland, which could greatly enhance the power of illusions. It was a pity that the 10,000 goo spirit devouring art required a large number of special goo worms to cultivate the spirit highland. The crimson ice crystal art also required extremely cold items. Therefore, Leng Shiqi could only condense the above few types of spirit highland. Of course, a normal spirit cultivator being able to cultivate one type of spirit highland was already the limit. Those who had 2 types of spirit highlands were extremely rare, and Leng Shiqi was able to cultivate 6 types of spirit highlands at his current stage, so he should be satisfied. In addition to condensing spirit highland, many high-level cultivation methods could be cultivated. For example, the follow-up cultivation method of the Cold Nether treasure book that Eunuch Gao gave him not long ago had a 6th-level spirit technique, Cold Nether Hell. The Nirvana Remnant Wind Scroll and Extreme Purple Thunder Sound Record also had Whirlwind and Extreme Purple Lightning Hand respectively, and they were both 6th-level spirit techniques. After arranging his own cultivation process, Leng Shiqi finally began his closed-door cultivation. Chapter 570. On a night more than a month later, a huge procession was traveling on a wide official road. There were 4 palanquins in the middle of the procession, and the one at the front was a royal palanquin with golden patterns. It was luxurious and noble. There were 3 palanquins at the back. They were also more exquisite, but not as luxurious. There were dozens of guards at the front and back of the palanquins. Every one of them had spiritual energy flowing through them. They were all experts at the 4 realms of the sky realm. The person sitting in the palanquin with golden patterns was the 9th prince of the Thunderblaze dynasty, Lei Haoqing. At this moment, Lei Haoqing's face was glowing, and the corner of his mouth was brimming with a proud smile. Beside him, there was a young eunuch kneeling and massaging his legs. Lei Haoqing laughed and said, "Ha, the top sect, the 1,000 Illusionary Sword sect, has submitted to me. Now, my forces are even stronger than the 4th and 13th princes. I'm only slightly weaker than Big Brother. Let's see if those people still dare to look down on me. Of course, Your Highness, you're the true son of heaven. In the future, the Thunderblaze dynasty will be yours." The young eunuch flattered. "You can't speak carelessly. However, you're right." Ha ha ha. Lei Haoqing laughed even more impudently, as if the throne was already beckoning to him. He suddenly asked, "Where are we now?" The young eunuch looked outside and replied, "Your Highness, we'll be at Pingwan City soon. After that, we'll be at the imperial capital." Pingwan City. Yes, don't rest in the city. Send a few people to buy some supplies. We'll hurry back to the imperial capital. Lei Haoqing restrained his smile and said seriously, "It's been more than a month. I don't know what they've done. We have to go back as soon as possible. There's also that damned girl Lian Yi. She's just a wild girl adopted by Heavenly Venerable He Yen. She really thinks she's something. If we can rope in Heavenly Venerable He Yen and obtain those countless secrets, the throne will be in the bag." Just as Lei Haoqing was fantasizing about the future, a person wearing a golden patterned blood robe was standing on a hill 15 kilometers away. Anyone with some knowledge could recognize that this person was wearing the golden patterned blood robe assassin from the blood clothing pavilion. And this person was Leng Shiqi. After more than a month of seclusion, he was called out by Lian Yi, saying that the time had come. Leng Shiqi did not want to waste any more time. First, he quietly went to the nearest branch of the blood-clothed pavilion. After checking, he found that someone had issued a mission to assassinate the Een Thunder Guards. Thus, he informed the Blood Garment Pavilion that they did not need to take this mission too seriously. They just needed to put on an act. At the same time, he was directly promoted to a golden-striped blood-clothed killer with the cultivation of Gang Spirit Realm. He also got several Heaven Gang elixirs, which was a big harvest. After that, he had spurred his horse and arrived at the path that Lei Haoqing had to take to return to the imperial capital. Now, Lei Haoqing's group was completely exposed to him. Being in Gang Spirit Realm, the scope of his Byakugan had expanded to a radius of 30 miles. There were 60 or 70 people in Lei Haoqing's guards. Most of them were in Spiritual Pulse Realm, a dozen in Spiritual Aperture Realm, and several in Spiritual Gang Realm. This arrangement was comparable to the high-end combat power of a second-rate sect. This was somewhat inconsistent with the information that Lian Yi had given him. According to the intelligence, there were only 2 Gang Spirit Realm masters around Lei Haoqing, but now there were 5. Obviously, the 3 extra people must be from the 1,000 Illusion Sword sect. It seems that Lei Haoqing has succeeded in getting the support of the 1,000 Illusion Sword sect, Leng Shiqi said secretly. When he mentioned the 1,000 Illusion Sword sect, he thought of Ozu. He didn't know how Ozu was doing in that small secret realm. He had said that he would not come out until he reached the Spiritual Aperture Realm. With his talent and unique cultivation environment, he should have reached the Spiritual Aperture Realm after such a long time. In addition to Ozu, Leng Shiqi also remembered that he and Delta Origi had been chased by the Gang Spirit Realm masters of the 1,000 Illusion Sword sect. At that time, if Wu Xiang hadn't arrived in time, he would have probably died there. When enemies met, their eyes burned with hatred. However, now was not the time for revenge. His goal was, of course, Lei Haoqing. Although there were 3 more Gang Spirit Realm masters in the team, as long as there were no oneness of heaven and men, Leng Shiqi had nothing to fear. If it was more than a month ago, he wouldn't have dared to say this, but now it was different. Although it was not a long time, he had condensed several kinds of powerful gang spirit and cultivated a lot of high-level spiritual skills. His combat strength had improved a lot. Now, if he were to fight with Elder One of the Sky Crane sect again, it would not be so difficult. Leng Shiqi was now very confident in his strength, but he would not be arrogant enough to break into the guards and kill Lei Haoqing. After all, his task was not to kill Lei Haoqing, but to give him a warning and let him know that someone wanted to kill him. He turned one hand and an ice crystal longbow appeared in his hand. This was the 5th level spiritual weapon he chose in the Gu God sect, the Xian Ice Bow. He had not used this Xian Ice Bow since he got it. It was really useless because he didn't have a matching spiritual skill for archery. He also didn't expect that the Xian Ice Bow would come in handy at this time. He pulled the bow to a full moon, but there was no bow and arrow in his hand. Suddenly, bursts of crimson cold air gushed out in front of him and condensed into an ice crystal bow and arrow. This was not the end. Suddenly, the crimson bow and arrow bloomed with the color of blood. A strong blood aura spread out and completely dyed the bow and arrow scarlet. This was the blood aura that assassins of the Blood Cloak Pavilion were best at, and it was also the terrifying blood aura. Leng Shiqi narrowed his eyes and directly locked on to Lei Haoqing, who was 15 kilometers away, through the Byakugan. His mental strength was also running wildly, and an invisible storm faintly appeared behind him. He wanted to kill Lei Haoqing from a distance. No one could do such a thing from 15 kilometers away, and no one would think of it. Not to mention the bow and arrow, even a spiritual caster could not use a spiritual skill that could cover 15 kilometers. Moreover, how could you lock on to the enemy's position from 15 kilometers away? It should be known that the slightest difference could lead to a huge error. As long as you were slightly off track, you would not know how far off track you were. But Leng Shiqi could totally do it. First of all, his strength was strong enough. He had a variety of high-level cultivation methods, and he also had the supreme cultivation method of Heavenly Star God. With this alone, he was not much weaker than a master at the late stage of Gang Spirit Realm. In addition, his physical strength was also very strong, and he had opened up all the spiritual meridians and spiritual cavities in his body. It was not a problem for him to shoot an arrow more than 10 kilometers away. The key was that he could also use his majestic mental strength to control the bow and arrow, which was enough to shoot an arrow 15 kilometers away. Leng Shiqi calculated the speed of Lei Haoqing's movement through the Byakugan. After a few breaths, he loosened his fingers, and an arrow like a bloody meteor pierced the night sky and shot 30 kilometers away. At this moment, Lei Haoqing was still happily fantasizing about the future. Suddenly, the 2 guards at Gang Spirit Realm on both sides of his palanquin changed their expressions. Chapter 571. The 2 guards in Gang Spirit Realm suddenly reined in their horses, and the people in the 3 sedan chairs behind them jumped out and looked up at the sky. In the night, they saw a blood-red meteor shooting towards them at an amazing speed. At first, it was just an inconspicuous red dot, but in the blink of an eye, the blood-red meteor had approached. The horrible evil chi contained in it was frightening even from a distance. Who is it? Assassin. Protect the Emperor. Lei Haoqing's 2 guards in Gang Spirit Realm shouted at the same time. The old man in fine clothes slapped out, and a stream of evil chi burst out. In it, one could vaguely hear the wailing of evil ghosts, which was extremely gloomy. The one-armed man next to him lit up a single saber in his left hand, and a powerful pure yang saber gang rose to the sky, as if to tear the world apart. The other 3 experts in Gang Spirit Realm of the Thousand Illusion Sword sect reacted a little slower. They also drew out their swords, and the violent sword gang swept in all directions. The 5 experts in Gang Spirit Realm joined forces to attack the blood-red meteor. They thought it would be easy to destroy it, but the blood-red meteor suddenly changed its direction in midair and circled around, dodging all the attacks. The 5 of them turned pale with fright. Seeing the bloody meteor shooting straight at Lei Haoqing's palanquin, the 5 of them immediately surrounded the palanquin tacitly. Immediately, 5 dazzling spiritual gang appeared and protected the palanquin. With a loud clang, the 5 spiritual highlands were slightly distorted. Fortunately, they managed to block this strange attack. What happened just now happened in a few blinks of an eye. It was not until then that the other dozens of guards realized what had happened. All of them protected Lei Haoqing as if they were facing a formidable enemy. What a joke. If Lei Haoqing really died here, all of them would be buried with him. Maybe their families would be implicated because of this. Who on earth dares to plot against the 9th prince? Do you know that this is a serious crime that can lead to the execution of all 9 generations of your family? The old man in luxurious clothes shouted. His eyes were also looking around, but he did not find any clues. Lei Haoqing, who was sitting in the palanquin, was already pale from fright. His body was drenched in sweat. His cultivation talent was average, and he was already 30 years old, but he was still in the early stage of the spirit pulse realm. Therefore, the movement of several gang spirit realm practitioners outside just now was no different from the collapse of heaven and earth for him. Of course, this was nothing. What truly terrified him was that someone had actually come to kill him. Who in this world would dare to kill him? Who wanted to kill him? Who had the ability to kill him? There was no need to think about the answer. It must be the other princes. Especially the first prince, Prince Ing, the 4th prince, Prince Qi, and the 13th prince, who was favored by the emperor, were the most suspicious. Lei Haoqing trembled as he said fiercely, "They must have been afraid that I had the support of the 1,000 illusionary sword sect and surpassed them, so they tried to kill me." Good, my good brothers. Outside, the guards were nervous for a long time, but there was no movement in the surroundings. After the time it took to burn a stick of incense, the old man in luxurious clothes withdrew his spiritual gang and turned to walk into the imperial palanquin. "Your Highness, are you all right?" After such a long time, Lei Haoqing also calmed down a little. He said, "Mr. Mo, I'm fine. What's going on outside? Why is there no movement for a long time?" Mr. Mo said, "Just now, there was indeed a sneak attack by a master, and his means were strange and unpredictable. The 5 of us joined hands to block him. The man failed to kill him, so he probably knew that he had no chance and fled." Hearing this, Lei Haoga felt a little relieved. Whether the assassin could be caught or not was a matter for later. At least he was safe now. He asked again, "Mr. Mo, can you infer from the assassin's spiritual skill which master he is?" The blood-red flowing light just now was a very strong gang chi, called Blood Evil Gang. Therefore, the assassin must be a golden-striped blood-robed assassin from the blood-robed pavilion. Mr. Mo said in a low voice. Blood-robed pavilion? Lei Haoqing was also shocked when he heard these 3 words. Blood-robed pavilion was a world-famous assassin force, and it was even more notorious in the Thunder Flame dynasty. It was also known as one of the 7 unique sects in the world. In terms of strength, it was definitely far superior to the 1,000 illusionary sword sect, which was also a top sect. But even if he knew that the assassin was from the blood-robed pavilion, what could he do? Was he going to attack the blood-robed pavilion? That was obviously impossible, so what Lei Haoqing wanted to know most now was who hired the blood-robed pavilion assassin. "Mr. Mo, can you find out who the employer is from the blood-robed pavilion?" Mr. Mo suddenly looked embarrassed and said, "Your Highness, you don't know that the blood-robed pavilion never divulges any information about the employer. Even if we get the employer's information by various means, maybe that person is just a puppet. As far as I know, the real murderer will not show any flaws, but I think the murderer must be among those people." He said it very obscurely, but it was also very clear. Lei Haoqing's face turned blue and white, and his eyes were constantly changing. He asked again, "Mr. Mo, do you think the blood-robed pavilion assassin has a chance of succeeding in the assassination with you 5 masters in the gang spirit realm?" Mr. Mo shook his head and said, "It's almost impossible, so I think this may just be a warning to your Highness." Warning? Lei Haoqing showed an unhappy look. What a good warning. Let's wait and see. Then, Lei Haoqing and others continued to move forward cautiously. Leng Shiqi, who saw all this, smiled slightly. He had fulfilled Lien Ye's request and didn't show up from the beginning to the end. If he could be found out by others in this way, he would admit defeat. Then he turned and left directly, leaving only the frightened Lei Haoqing and the panic-stricken guards. The next day, Ling Shiqi returned to the state of closed-door training. Now he didn't have the system, so he could only rely on himself to practice and comprehend the spiritual skills. He couldn't delay it at all. The news that Lei Haoqing was assassinated on his way back spread like wildfire, and the whole imperial capital was shocked. The first thought in many people's minds was not to guess who the murderer was, but to realize that the fight for the throne had become so fierce. It was common for those princes to form cliques and fight for power and profit. There were also many people who secretly set up obstacles, but there had never been such a thing as assassination. Lei Haoqing's assassination was like a signal, a fuse, which instantly raised the conflict between the princes to the most tense point. In Prince Ying's mansion. Prince Ying was Lei Haoyan, the first prince. As the first prince, he was not favored at first, because his birth mother's identity was very ordinary. But Lei Haoyan was very capable. When he came of age, he took the initiative to join the army. He had been on the battlefield for a long time and made countless military exploits. When he was in his 30s, he was conferred the title of Prince Ying and was not driven away to his fief, which showed that he was valued very much. Now Lei Haoyan was in his 40s. After receiving the news that Lei Haoqing was assassinated, he only said one sentence: petty tricks. Chapter 572. Prince Qi's Palace. Prince Qi was the fourth prince, Lei Haoran. He was not the eldest son, but his mother was the empress. Therefore, when Lei Haoran reached adulthood at the age of 18, he was given the title of Prince Qi. From then on, he became the center of attention. Until now, his henchmen had spread throughout the imperial court, and he had many strategists by his side. It could be said that he had established his own faction. At this moment, he was conversing with a capable strategist. "Mr. Yan, what do you think about the assassination of Lei Haoqing?" The man with the goatee opposite him smiled. "There are only two possibilities. First, the other princes could not hold it in. Secondly, someone did it on purpose in order to mess up the situation." Lei Haoran also looked thoughtful. "If it's the first possibility, who do you think did it, Mr. Yan? If it's the second possibility, who's the one secretly adding fuel to the fire? Among all the princes, only Prince Ying and the 13th prince have the ability to hire the golden-striped blood-clothed assassins from the Blood Garment Pavilion. However, the traces are too obvious. In fact, the two of them are the least suspicious. If it's not one of the princes who did it, then this matter is worth thinking about. I'm afraid that someone will come to disrupt the situation." Lei Haoran did not say anything, but his hands were clenched tightly. At the same time, the 13th prince, Lei Haoyun, also received the same information. Lei Haoyun was Lei Qingjuan's youngest son. He had just turned 20 this year. Whether it was his appearance, personality, or behavior, he was very similar to Lei Qingjun. Therefore, Lei Qingjun doted on this youngest son very much. Just because of this favor from the heavens, a large number of court officials and spirit cultivators came to seek refuge. Lei Haoyun frowned. "Sigh, Lei Haoqing and I don't get along well. Now, I'm afraid that many people are suspecting me. The tree wants to be quiet, but the wind will not stop." In the depths of the palace, Lei Qingjun threw out the report that recorded this matter. His face looked calm, but his eyes were filled with rage. Cough, cough. Suddenly, he coughed violently. An old eunuch beside him hurriedly fed him a pill and patted his back. Only then did he feel better. "Little do, I'm not dead yet and they're already so daring. When I'm dead, do they still want to rebel?" The little do he spoke of was the head steward of the servants' administration. He was in charge of all the eunuchs in the palace. Even Eunuch Gao was his subordinate. He smiled and said, "Your Majesty, please don't be angry. There is something strange about this matter. Maybe someone is deliberately slandering you." No matter what the truth is, the situation in the imperial capital will definitely change. Speaking up to here, Lei Qingjun paused for a moment, and a trace of determination flashed through his eyes. Little do, you go and prepare for that matter. It must be done within a year. Your Majesty, there's no need to be in such a hurry, right? Eunuch Du asked in surprise. Lei Qingjun said sternly, we can't wait any longer. In order to resist foreign aggression, we must first settle our internal affairs. If we don't suppress those brats, we will fail for sure. Go. This servant receives the order. Eunuch Du could only accept the order and leave. Lei Haoqing's assassination midway attracted the attention of all the higher-ups. Even His Majesty was alarmed. But no one would have thought that Lian Yi, who arranged this matter, just didn't want Lei Haoqing to bother her. Even Lian Yi herself wouldn't have thought that the struggle in the imperial capital would become even more intense because of her. Several days later, the 2 months Ling Shiqi had been in seclusion for finally came to an end. On this day, He Fei Chen knocked on the door to Ling Shiqi's secret room. Sir, Eunuch Gao sent someone to pass on a message. He wants you to go over. Ling Shiqi walked out of the secret room and asked, his calculations are quite accurate. Did anything happen in these 2 months? He had secretly snuck out to assassinate Lei Haoqing. No one knew that he had left. He Fei Chen immediately began to talk about this matter with a smile of exultation. Apart from this, our 29th Guard Squad has also completed 3 missions, all of which went very smoothly. It has to be said that Feng Mo is truly powerful. Once, if it weren't for him, we would have lost several people. Ling Shiqi laughed secretly. Feng Shamo was indeed very powerful as the personal disciple of the blood-robed pavilion master. Oh, by the way, these are the materials sent from the Western Wilderness Prefecture. They have been sent twice. He Fei Chen took out 2 mustard seed bags and said. Ling Shiqi probed inside with his spiritual force. There were a lot of resources in the 2 mustard seed bags, but their grades were very ordinary. They added up to about 170,000 to 180,000 spiritual stones. He took out some awakening elixirs and commonly used healing elixirs from the mustard seed bags and gave them to He Fei Chen, saying, you have worked hard during this period. You can share these with everyone. This lowly subordinate thanks my lord. He Fei Chen didn't say any more courteous words and happily received it. Then, Ling Shiqi went straight to the cold nether pavilion and met Eunuch Gao. Eunuch Gao looked up and down at Ling Shiqi and said slowly, your strength now is not weaker than the late stage of Gang's spirit realm. You have also made contributions, so you are qualified to take over as the eunuch envoy. That's my intention. Ling Shiqi nodded. He had planned to be promoted as the eunuch envoy by himself after coming out of training. Well, you can do it in 2 days. At that time, you will also be in charge of several guards, and your status and rights will be announced soon. Hearing this, Ling Shiqi felt a little strange. It seemed that Eunuch Gao was very eager to promote him as the eunuch envoy. He probably wanted him to do something. Sure enough, Eunuch Gao continued, when you are stable as the eunuch envoy, do me a favor. Ling Shiqi thought to himself that what was to come would come. The debts owed would be paid back sooner or later. He had just repaid Lian Ye's favor a few days ago, and now it was Eunuch Gao's turn. Eunuch Gao had helped him to bear the destruction of the small chaotic cave of 5 elements, which was a big favor. He immediately cupped his fists and said, Master, please instruct me. Li Juqing schemed against us last time. Of course, we can't just let it go. Eunuch Gao's tone was cold. We are now in charge of 8 counties in the west of the Thunderfire dynasty, but there are actually 9 counties in the west. Do you know who is in charge of that county? Although Ling Shiqi didn't know, he immediately guessed it. Li Juqing. Eunuch Gao said sternly, that's right. There was once when we were seriously injured, and there were many things going on in the palace, so he secretly took away one of our counties. That county was Ningyang County. Hearing the words, Ningyang County, Ling Shiqi's heart skipped a beat. Isn't the secret treasure of the Star clan that Zhuge Yun mentioned in Ningyan County? If Eunuch Gao sent him to Ningyan County, he could take the secret treasure along the way. Right now, Li Zhongtao, the patrol inspector of Ningyan County's Dark Thunder Guards, is Li Ju Cheng's trusted aide. However, he is a complete piece of trash. His cultivation of unity of heaven and man was forcefully broken through by relying on external objects. Ningyan County is in endless chaos. How can such a person be the patrol inspector of a county? Eunuch Gao's words were full of disdain for Li Zhongtao. Leng Shiqi understood that Eunuch Gao wanted him to go to Ningyan County to seize power. Chapter 573. Eunuch Gao continued, I will check the official documents of Ningyan County for you. You will go to Ningyan County as an inner supervisor, which is half a level higher than Li Zhongtao. It is also good for you to do things. If you can overthrow Li Zhongtao and replace him, the previous favor will be written off. Not only that, I can also grab the position of deputy director for you. Deputy director. There were only 36 deputy directors in the whole Dark Thunder Guards, and the 4 directors were not all hegemonic and dictatorial people. Many things were actually handled by the deputy directors. It could be said that the 36 deputy directors were already big shots with great power. But those deputy directors were all great masters in the realm of oneness of heaven and men, and each of them had a strong background. How could it be easy to replace them? This is not only a private matter of our family, but also the emperor's will. Eunuch Gao's words shocked Leng Shiqi. He soon thought that this might be acquiesced by Lei Qingjun. His Majesty did not want to see the Li family in the Dark Thunder Guards too powerful. He cupped his hands and said, I will live up to your trust, Master. I believe in your ability. Get ready to set off in a few days. I'm waiting for your good news. Eunuch Gao had the intention to see him off. Leng Shiqi immediately went out. He turned around and took the inner supervisor token to be promoted to an inner supervisor. Soon after, the news that he became an inner supervisor spread wildly inside the Dark Thunder Guards. Although the name Lu Xingji had been quiet for a while in the past 2 months, it was still amazing when it was mentioned. Now he suddenly became an inner supervisor. There was a lot of discussion. Lu Xingji, as the head of the elite society, is really talented. Some time ago, he killed the conspiracy of the Thunder Exterminating Alliance and the Tianhe Gang, which is also a great merit. But these are not enough to be an inner supervisor. Yes, especially the inner supervisor of the War Thunder Guards, who is basically a great master in the realm of oneness of heaven and men. Not to mention qualifications and merits, he is not qualified in terms of cultivation. You can't say that. You know he killed a master in the late stage of Gang Spirit realm in Shantai County. His strength can't be underestimated. With Eunuch Gao's support, it's not impossible for him to become the head of the eunuch. Sai, who asked him to be so talented, capable, and have connections. We can't compare to him, we can't compare. Alright, we're just casually talking. Don't go looking for trouble with him. He's not someone to be trifled with. Correct. Leng Shiqi had not been in the Dark Thunder Guard headquarters for long, but he had left a deep impression on people. He had only been here for a few days, but he had dared to kill Wei Xiangming in front of Manager Hai. That kind of crazy ruthlessness made people not dare to provoke him. However, the fact that ordinary Dark Thunder Guards didn't dare to touch him didn't mean that no one dared to. For example, Li Juecheng, one of the 4 great managers. Previously, he had schemed against Eunuch Gao and Leng Shiqi, thinking that it was impossible for Leng Shiqi to complete the mission of eliminating the Thunder Destruction Alliance. Unexpectedly, not only did Leng Shiqi complete the mission, he even exceeded the quota. This contribution wasn't something a single mission could compare to. It was a great contribution to quelling the rebellion. Li Juecheng was secretly resentful that he had tried to steal a chicken only to end up losing the rice. He also admitted that he had underestimated Leng Shiqi. He didn't expect Eunuch Gao to be able to invite Zhan Rui, the discipline commissioner of Shantai County. Since Leng Shiqi came back, he had been in seclusion, which made Li Jueqing feel a lot better. But at this time, Ling Shiqi suddenly became the inner supervisor. This made Li Jueqing feel very uncomfortable. At this moment, he was sitting upright, his eyes flashing fiercely. After a long while, he shouted, "Come." Ling Shiqi didn't have the leisure to care about what other people thought because he was quite busy now. He had officially been promoted to the inner supervisor. In addition to the purple cloak, there was also a delicate feathered official hat on his head. This hat was also a good spiritual weapon, which had the miraculous effect of calming the mind. As the inner supervisor, Ling Shiqi could command 5 War Thunder Guards, from the 28 guards to the 32 guards, now under his command. The 28 guards had been reorganized recently, but there were not many people, only 9. One of them was at the early stage of Gang Spirit Realm, and the rest were at the middle and late stage of Spirit Aperture Realm. The number of other guards varied from a dozen. In total, he had 6 Masters of Gang Spirit Realm and nearly 100 War Thunder Guards of Spirit Aperture Realm in his hands. Moreover, these War Thunder Guards were famous for their powerful combat strength. If he was asked to destroy Jihuashan Zhuang now, he didn't have to waste his effort to lead the wolf and drive the tiger away. He could crush Jihuashan Zhuang with absolute strength. It could be said that the power controlled by Ling Shiqi was already between the second-rate power and the first-class power. Not only that, it should be known that the duty of the Dark Thunder Guards was not only to fight, but to supervise the world. No matter where Ling Shiqi went, his identity as the inner supervisor was enough to be valued by anyone. At this time, Ling Shiqi had moved to his exclusive inner supervisor mansion. He casually named it Xingji Pavilion. In the conference hall of Xingji Pavilion, Ling Shiqi sat in the main seat. There were 2 people standing on his left and right. They were Feng Sha Mo and Huang Lao. There were 5 people below. They were the inner supervisors of the guards. He Fei Chen was also among them. Ling Shiqi did not break his promise. After he was promoted to the position of the inner supervisor, he passed the position of the inner supervisor of the 29 guards to He Fei Chen. According to qualifications and strength, Huang Lao was the most suitable candidate. However, Huang Lao was not interested in power. Instead, he was more willing to follow Ling Shiqi. Therefore, this position was given to He Fei Chen. His cultivation was at the 9th level of Spirit Aperture Realm, which was barely acceptable. Of course, what Ling Shiqi valued more was this person's scheming and ability. Ling Shiqi gathered everyone here to set the rules. Originally, he thought that some of the Spirit Gang Realm inner supervisors would be dissatisfied. However, they all obeyed his orders, which made Ling Shiqi unable to use the means he had prepared. He had infinite potential, outstanding strength, meritorious service, and the support of eunuch Gao. If anyone dared to disobey him, they were not just looking for trouble, but looking for death. In a few days, I have to go out under orders. The time is not certain. During my absence, do what you usually do. Don't make trouble, but don't be afraid of trouble. Ling Shiqi said, Huang Lao, I'll have to trouble you with many chores in Xingji Pavilion. Huang Lao cupped his fists and said, Your Excellency, please rest assured. Ling Shiqi, who was at the Spirit Gang Realm, could condense his voice into a line. He quietly transmitted to Huang Lao and He Fei Chen, if I leave, Feng Mo and his sister will do something. My mission this time is dangerous, so I'll take the 2 of them with me. After that, you have to set up some eavesdropping restrictions in their room. The more secretive, the better. Huang Lao and He Fei Chen both nodded without leaving a trace. You're tuning into the Dreamy Love Stories YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.